Hello? What's up, pissers? Happy Friday! Hey, I'll say it. I'll be the first one in recorded history to say this. TGIF. Am I right? Am I right, ladies? Fellas? Can anybody corroborate TGIF? Anybody at all? Please. Please, somebody please say TGIF. Thank you. Oh, thank you. This grandpa is fantastic. Exactly. Welcome to the Friday stream over at twitch.tv/judgespod. Hello, Funboy Hooters. Hello, Goose Duck 216. Is that your area code? Gary Len. Hello, TGIF. Absolutely. Gay lesbian, always here, always queer, always used to it. That's what I have always said. It's your birthday? Oh, your birthday is 216. That's coming up. 3 months. 3 months and 13 days. That's not that bad. That's pretty close. What is up, the Bryce Co? What is up with you? Big 3-3. Hey, that's actually kind of ironic because 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then you add one more 3, and that's 3-3. This is kind of like your platinum birthday. It's like one step up from your golden birthday. Nice fonk? Is it the music? Wait, yeah, hang on. This isn't my normal playlist. What is this playlist? Well, I guess this is a normal playlist. I just have never gotten to this song. It's not bad. Score DJ FKU, and I assume that's pronounced Frozen. I've never heard this song. I've never heard this genre before. Boy, I really feel like maybe this is just me. I feel like this song has been going on forever, and we're only halfway done, and it's only been a minute and a half. Anywho, we're not here to talk about that. Got to put on AJR. Do you guys want to listen to AJR? What song? Any album recommendations? I listen to him all the time. Is the thing. I love AJR. Wait, fuck. We can't listen to this. It's Friday. It's not Thursday. If I streamed yesterday, then we can't listen. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we cannot listen to AJR. If only they had a song called Thirsty Friday. You've been listening to Bluey all day, I hear. I hear that Bluey makes bangers. This song goes so hard, so unironically. 7 a.m. waking up in the morning, gotta be fresh, gotta go downstairs, gotta have my bowl, gotta have cereal. Ticking on and on, everybody's rushing, gotta get down to my bus stop, gotta catch my bus. I see my friend sitting in the front seat, kicking in the back seat. No, why would you don't think I don't know the lyrics to Friday by Rebecca Black? I don't know the rap. I do not know the rap. Unfortunately. If you don't know the words to this song, you're not American. You ran inside Panera to get my lunch and you missed so much? Not really. Not really. I feel like you could probably piece together how we got from A to B. Today's Friday. Driving real fast and fun, thinking about fun. You know what it is. I got this, you got this, we got this. Do you guys not know this entire song? Anywho, whoop-de-woo. This, that, and the third. Let's get... Hey, Rebecca Black, I've let you had your moment. You were in 5th grade when that song came out? You're not... You were in... What? How old was I when that song came out? Rebecca Black. When did that drop? Release date? 2011. Come on. March 14th, Pi Day. Oh, it was released as a music video on February 10th. Not that far away. Hang on. Not that far away from February 16th. Hang on. February 10th, 2011 is when it came out. I was a freshman. I was in 1st grade. Come on, guys. Come on. I guess I would have been a junior. I was 10. Dude, no! Stop making me feel old. I was 16. 2011. I was 16 in May. Bro, would you mind reacting to my new song? No. You're not a real person. What do you mean? You can't come in here, hear me listening to Friday by Rebecca Black and be like, now's my chance. Now's my chance to anywho. No. I'm not trusting you, Sergio Giovanni. I'm not. I promise you I'm not trusting you. It's something different. I'm sure it is something different. We're not here to talk about something different. We're here to talk about Rebecca Black's Friday. Nobody clicked the link. Is it like Blade? Hey, yo, I want to subscribe to Patreon, but I don't know how is it an app? Oh, Finn's mom. No. Finn's mom. It's super easy. You can go to Patreon on your app store and download it there. You can also just do it on a desktop. It doesn't super matter. And if you have Spotify or you have Discord and you want access to those features, you can link them to your Patreon account, and then when you sub to our Patreon, it will automatically on your phone, like, and everything, put it into your feeds. So here, I'll show you. I don't know how I can show you. Let me do it off screen here to make sure I'm not showing anything crazy. But you can go to patreon.com/judgiespod. Okay. And I can't show that. So here we go. I think what I will be showing on screen is fine to show up. So if you go to patreon.com/judgiespod, when you sign in, you'll be able to see your membership like benefits, and you can connect your Spotify account right here. It'll automatically put the bonus episodes and everything straight into your Spotify. Otherwise, you can do it here on other podcast apps, and it should have a nice walkthrough on how to do that. If you want to watch the YouTube videos, it's different. You have to click a link through the Patreon app every single week, but you'll get notified every time a new post is made. But thank you for wanting to support us. And yes, Rebecca Black does still make music. Rebecca Black is honestly probably more famous now than before. I mean, that's not true at all, obviously, but Rebecca Black has 400,000 Spotify listeners, monthly listeners. That's not bad. She was just touring. Wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me. Listen in me mom's car. Yeah, no, you would. If you just use Spotify, there should be a way to get the ad-free and the bonus episodes put straight into Spotify. I haven't done it personally, but from what people have said, they say it's easy. Hello, Cat Daddy. Hello, Old Ricky. You're here for book club. I'm sorry, I'm plugging the Patreon. Somebody asked about the Patreon. What genre does she make now? I do need to continue talking about Rebecca Black. Here is her most played song. It's called Yoga, but it's not even by her. It's by BB No Money featuring Rebecca Black. So I'm not going to do that one. Let's Okay, her second most played song is also Friday. Third most played song. It's called Crumbs. Let's give it a listen. That's not, I mean, it's not a terrible song. All right, Erica, I see you're like, wham, I want to talk about books. I'm a nerd. I get it. Is that okay? So here's the thing, guys. I don't know what a book club is, and I'm starting a book club. I don't know what to do. But, Erica, we can talk about your book series. But here's what I wanted to do as this project. Okay. So all you little nerds, hey, I want to be a nerd with you. I don't read. However, I like to think myself as someone who wants to be well read, right? I want to know what's going on. I want to know his stuff. And I'm also a leftist. So if you're not a leftist, get out. Okay, now that all the non-leftists aren't here. I think this will be interesting. So a lot of internal leftist online discourse follows there's like two camps. There's like people who are like normal, and then there are people who scream at people if they haven't read enough theory. Now, I don't want to read theory. I'm not a theory guy. Okay? But I think we can learn through a book club by reading selected works and create a leftist book club. And I was a little surprised because this isn't a thing. I don't know. This just seems like such an easy thing to make, and it's not a thing, which is crazy to me. And so I've actually had this idea for a long time. I've actually had it for probably about a little over a year, maybe close to a year and a half. I just been just running around in my brain, didn't really know if I wanted to commit to it, but I really do. I think it's a really interesting idea. So the idea here, is there a way to zoom in? Here we go. Is create something called a leftist book club. That's what we'll be titling it. And it's just like any other book clubs where we're going to be reading one book a month, right? We don't want to overwhelm people, although the topics that we discuss will probably be on the heavier side if I had to take a guess. And it's just focused on education on leftist topics and values. And in a way that I think, you know, as an American, somebody who was raised in the Midwest, and is white and male, I have a very limited worldview, as a lot of people do. And there's stuff that I'm really interested in, a la Black Wall Street, the Tulsa Massacre. It's something I've heard about, was never taught it in school. And I know it obviously there's a lot of really interesting stories and stuff that we can learn about. The Israel-Palestine conflict, something that we don't really get taught in schools. We don't really understand much about it. And the most common sentiment before maybe like last month was, it's complicated. I don't know. There's a lot going on. Well, let's learn. Kent State Massacre, a really good example of Americans protesting and getting killed by the government. So that's interesting. To me, that was in the 70s. And then like land back movements. So I want to have a big, broad, like net to cast to learn more things that I don't know about. And then also be able to discuss that with everybody. So the book announcement will be 1 month in advance. And then at the end of every month, we'll announce the new book and then also talk about the old book. So that's where we can come in and like, obviously I'll be the one streaming, but whoever wants to talk in the chat, we can obviously discuss different parts of the book. Potentially, if it grows to a size where I feel like we have good enough moderation, we can do like Discord calls where you guys can come in and actually chat about what you thought about the book. It'll also help us support leftist authors who obviously are important to support because, you know, we want that thinking being pushed. And also, as we grow, I have the idea of being able to give away copies because obviously not everybody can afford books, right? Books are kind of expensive, especially if you can't do audiobooks or digital books. So as we grow, there's be a way for, even if you can't afford to participate, or you have somebody that you know that would really benefit from reading the book, we can give away books. Not doing that now because money. You just finished oh boy, we just talked about this, Erica. How do you pronounce date? I know what it is. Well, I thought you might, hang on. I thought, whoops, how did I spell it that wrong? I thought you was about jeans. Let me tell you that the book cover is sick. Or support your local libraries. That's true. Hey, that's something that I totally forgot about. Absolutely correct. Right here. Boom, right here. I love the covers of those books. I don't know. So I don't know if the books we'll be choosing will be stocked in libraries, but if they are, absolutely. I don't know if there's a way to check that, but this is where I just decided to get off my white ass and listen by listening to white guys. This is Lowell Overruled. If you don't know who Lowell Overruled is, he's a public defender in New York, and he's a really, really good follow if you want to follow Lowell Overruled. And he wanted to do a on stream, and he talked about this book here.
I highly recommend that everyone gets it. Have you read this?
I know
you hate reading. This is a great book, though.
The 100 Years War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance from 1917 to 2017.
It's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, but Rashid Khalidi?
Yeah, King.
Okay. So he goes on to say, he, as somebody who, is a lawyer, you think he'd be educated on a lot of things, and obviously he is. And I believe he's also Jewish. If not, I know his brother is Jewish, because he talked about that later in the stream. But he admitted his lack of knowledge, is ignorance on the topic. He just, never learned about it, as a lot of people. And so I was interested in that book. I'm going to write down that website, or write down my desk is making a noise. I'm going to put that right here. Because I have heard about Libby. So this is the book. So this is what I'll be reading. If you don't feel comfortable getting it yet, or you don't even want to read about the topic, I'll be doing my analysis of the book. So you can just come into the stream and just literally get the spark noted of like what I'd think about it. And then of course that can open up discussion. And that's the idea. What was I just about to Google? I don't remember. So I was going to do a calendar. So this is the first book that I'll be reading. It's the one that Lowell Overruled was just plugging here. It's from Palestinian. The author's Palestinian. When would the stream be roughly? It would probably roughly be the same time today. It'd be on a Friday. So whatever time it is local for you now, it would be then. But when the stream is over, if you're not able to join in live, actually I might start a little bit later on Fridays just because I can push past people getting out of work maybe a little bit. Or maybe I won't do Fridays. Maybe I'll do Wednesdays. But that we can figure out. Whatever. I want to make sure that most people are going to be available to be involved in the discussion. Of course, that's the whole point. So I don't want to set a hard date yet, but it will be the first week of December, somewhere in there. So December, either 4th, 6th, or 8th, like somewhere in the first week of December. Thank you, Erica. Will be when I'll be discussing this book. Which again, the book, I can probably set up a command if you guys are interested. It's The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. It's 300 pages. It said down here 336 pages. It was published in 2020, so it doesn't have obviously anything past 2020, which there has been a lot of stuff happening past 2020, but from what I understand, this is a really good just collective of what's going on. The audiobook is 10 hours. And 30 minutes down here. So take notes. If you want to participate, please join. And if you guys have suggestions, absolutely. Like Shannon said, the spirit catches you and you fall down. Great. We'll add it to the list. I'm totally obviously up to suggestions, as it obviously is a book club, and that's the whole point. Oops. Any questions? I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it. It's something that I thought of it back before I even started FridgePod. I was thinking about doing something like this. And back then I was thinking more podcast media, like Medium, where we would just record it. And that was it. But then that just seemed, one, I would need a partner to do it with. And that means more partner like scheduling and work. And at the time, definitely didn't seem worth it, or it's just easier for stuff to fall apart when you have more than one person. You know what I mean? So I thought, hey, maybe I could just do it as a Twitch stream. And then I did cut myself off earlier. If you're not able to join the stream while it's live, it will be edited into a video and put onto my YouTube channel. So if you can't catch it live, it'll always be there. But if you want to be live in the discussion, obviously you have to be there at the right time. And then what else was I saying? Oh, so I thought about it a long time ago. And then I was like, well, maybe I can stream. And it's like, well, I don't know. Do I want to commit that much time to streaming? Obviously, I've streamed more recently, so I feel comfortable. And the best way to do something is just to do it, is the idea. So I'm glad people are excited. I think it'll be really fun. Obviously, the first book here, the Israel-Palestine conflict has been going on since, I mean, the first little descriptions, you know, it says 1899 when he starts talking about Yusuf Dia al-Khalidi. So it's obviously a big thing that's been happening for a long time, and it's still, with how much it's going on, things have escalated as of late. So I think it's a good starting off point. What was I going to Google? Oh, I was going to make a little command here. So let me do this. I don't want to do that. I'm going to make a little command here if you guys are interested in getting the book yourselves. Stream elements. Thank you. My brain is a little slow today. Chat commands, and then we'll just shorten it LBC. It's that way all your cool friends can be like, "You catch that new LBC?" And they'll be like, "What's that? Tell me more." And then you can plug. Isn't that sick? All right, so now if you do !LBC in the chat, it should pop up with a link to the book. Yeah, this is the guy. He's a Palestinian American historian, is the guy who wrote it. And yeah. Oh, I didn't even show you. It's fine. It's just a picture of a guy, picture of the author. Google his name if you want to Google his name. Does that sound good? Sound great? Sound grand? Okay, so let's get into the meat of the stream, because we're doing more politics, baby. Erica, this one's perfect for you, even though you're already so political. This is a video series that I say I would put a lot of my personal, like my own personal leftist radicalization, if you want to call that. I found this video series multiple years back, and it's very interesting to me. A lot of it, like as you can see here, they're going to be referencing Trump a lot. Obviously, a lot of the older videos came out during the Trump candidacy, but this playlist is meant to sort of help you identify what the right likes to do in order to radicalize people to the right. I think it's a really, really helpful series. I've watched it through multiple times, and I'm excited to do it again. So here we go. This is the introduction. It's all by Innuendo Studios. And of course, it's going to be talking about some stuff. And every episode will do a little content warning as he gives here, which is racism and homophobic slurs. I don't think he just straight up says homophobic slurs. That would be an insane video to start out with. But he's going to be talking about a lot of upsetting topics. But he always gives a nice little content warning. So here we go. This is the introduction.
Say, for the sake of argument, you run a modestly successful YouTube channel, and given the current political reality, you're thinking of doing some videos on the alt-right. Let's say you've been trying to understand the alt-right for some time and would like to do a series that tackles the big questions. What are the rhetorical strategies the alt-right uses to legitimize itself and gain power? How do these strategies work? Why do they work? How do we keep from falling for them? And, importantly, how do we catch ourselves when we start using them too? You're thinking of calling this series the Alt-Right Playbook. Setting aside that any lefty who makes a YouTube series with alt-right in the title will see their life go to hell, there are 3 things you'd have to clarify from the get-go. First, what is the alt-right? For clarity's sake, you'd have to tell people that the alt-right is a pack of loosely aligned groups and individuals that have existed for quite a while at the peripheries of American conservatism, but have recently gained footholds in the Republican Party proper. The term alt-right implies more or less what you think it would, positioning themselves as the young, edgy nirvana to the antiquated motley crew of 70s and 80s conservatism. They seek to replace and critique the likes of Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan for being, let's not mince words here, not reactionary enough. The alt-right, the people who adopt the label and those who just parrot their talking points, has high overlap with white supremacist think tank the National Policy Institute, Stormfront and the Ku Klux Klan, Breitbart News and various sections of 4chan, 8chan, and Reddit, sections of the asshole atheist community, anti-feminist YouTube, pickup artists and rape apologists, the not all men, all lives matter, and Gamergate crowds, and basically anyone who uses the terms social justice warrior or virtue signaling unironically.
So I think this is the first spot here that I think hooked me when I watched this many years ago. Was, I mean, how I remember in like 2018, maybe 2019, hearing the phrase social justice warrior for the millionth time, and like genuinely asking someone like, what an insane thing to be upset about. The idea of calling somebody a social justice warrior, somebody who is championing social justice, and that's supposed to be a bad thing. And I think this is one of those terms that, I mean, we'll explain as we go through this series, or we go deeper into, that you can literally hear like a 12-year-old boy who plays Call of Duty say, or like virtue signaling. It's another very big buzzword. It's just one of those words that gets through to every single level of conservatism, of like the people who were steeped, and they're the propagandists, and they're the ones who are going out and making videos every day to try to get people onto their side, all the way down to people who may not even understand they are being played to by the alt-right by doing things like calling people who champion social justice like a like new made up derogatory term.
Not everyone in these groups is in the alt-right, but the alt-right traffics at the intersection between them. There's a wide range of differing and frankly incompatible ideas about government and the social order among these groups, but as it gains power, the alt-right is congealing into a somewhat cohesive ideology. And the reason they matter at this moment in history is that of all the people in the 2016 primaries, only one was the alt-right candidate. And while not everyone who voted for him is in the alt-right, they are his base, his most ardent supporters, and they carried him all the way to the White House. Next, you'd want to clarify why they're called the alt-right. Alt-right is a term coined by National Policy Institute president, avowed white nationalist, and professional speedbag Richard Spencer. The term is meant as a euphemism, a way of painting a happy face.
If you've ever seen the picture of Nazi gets punched or video of Nazi gets punched, that's the guy. It's $5 a month sub to Patreon and $1 sub to the pod. No. It's you can do $1 a month on Patreon. So in the tiers, it breaks down what it is. $1 a month gives you ad-free main feed episodes. The $5 tier gets you, and the $1 tier gets you access to the Discord. The $5 tier gets you those things, so it gets you the ad-free episodes and it gets you the Discord. Plus, it gets you a monthly bonus episode, which that's going to be phased out sometime in the future. And then the $10 tier gets you weekly bonus episodes, and as well as the other tiers. But they're all to the podcast.
Bag Richard Spencer. The term is meant as a euphemism, a way of painting a happy face on racism. And that's not an opinion. One of the stated aims of Spencer's organization is the removal of non-whites from American society. And the purpose of rebranding white supremacy with a term like alt-right is so mainstream white people are not made to feel like racists when they vote for racist people with racist policies.
There's a very popular quote, which is, even Nazis know not to call themselves Nazis. And that's something that you'll see in conservatism a lot, is they'll constantly be rebranding either their causes or their just the way they term themselves or things, because eventually they know that they're extremely unpopular. Ultimately, at the end of the day, unpopular opinions are going to be seen as what they are, which is dangerous, bad, destructive. And people will start associating those negative feelings with that term. So back in I can remember as a kid, even some people saying this to me, in the early 2000s. But if we think back in like the 40s, even a lot of you could say out loud, "I'm a white supremacist" in public, and nobody would, like, back then, wouldn't really have the negative association to it. Now, if you say that, it is a phrase that immediately, like, you could not believe if somebody unironically came out and said that, right? Because they know that it has that negative connotation with it. Now, they have changed it to the alt-right. And again, this video now is 6-7 years old. There could be more of a change. And sometimes the liberal media does this for them. And a more recent example is they'll section out the crazies and try to put them off, right? So you have normal Republicans in Congress, and then you have the MAGA Republicans, and they're completely different. And so sometimes the liberals will be the ones actually trying to do that, and vice versa. You see that on the left as well, where conservatives try to, now conservatives, they kind of just attack everybody on the left who's even ostensibly on the left. But people on the left or centrists will often try to section off the far left, which hasn't stuck as a term. But then you have things like tankies, like stuff like this, where there's more words to try to defragment and be like, well, those are the bad ones, because eventually the name will have negative connotations to it. I don't know how conservative has stood the test of time, but yeah.
So every time a journalist writes an article about the dapper fashions of the alt-right and doesn't title it "Lipstick on a White Supremacist Pig,"
yeah, exactly, Dapstar. Then I'm a white supremacist. Now I'm sending my kid to a private school, moving to a neighborhood with other like-minded people, right? And like, people will, whether or not they're completely far right and they in their own time deem themselves as a white supremacist and they're racist and they're an anti-Semite and all these things, or if they're just a guy who was raised by, a suburb family, and then he lives in the suburbs with his wife, and he has 2.3 kids, and he's got a white picket fence, and he's got his dog. You'll hear, like, from an uncle at a party who may consider himself to be apolitical say similar things, where he says, like, well, it makes sense that my white kid hangs around other white kids. Like, you'll hear that at a party, and to them that doesn't quite sound bad. But if you say what they're actually saying, which is, I don't want my white kid to be around non-white people, and then it's like, oh, well, what the hell? Like, that's racist. Uncles after a few beers are so problematic. Yeah. I think a lot of it is a lot of people in America, I think, would identify as some sort of a centrist, a significant chunk, because ultimately they're probably uneducated and think that a centrist viewpoint is, like, better to have when you're uneducated. Uneducated on the topics, not uneducated in general. I wasn't trying to make a diss there. But and then men just don't shut the fuck up. I'm one of them, especially after a couple of beers. I'm also one of them. And so they're more likely, I feel like, to just be like, well, yeah, here's a crazy story I'm about to tell you that'll change how you look at me forever.
That journalist is being a coward and treating a hate group with kid gloves, basically because the hate group asked them to. So, you might want to clarify why you put that euphemism in the title of your videos. And, well, you'd have to explain that while the alt-right is racist, they're not only racist. They're also misogynist, anti-feminist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, classist, ableist, authoritarian, and fiercely anti-intellectual. So if you just did a find and replace of each instance of alt-right with white supremacist, you'd actually be leaving a lot out. That's not much of a defense for the term alt-right, it just paints a happy face on a bunch of horrible stuff, but it is useful to have a term that refers to the whole cluster, and you don't have the kind of internet pull where if you coined your own term, anyone would know what you're talking about. So you'll just have to promise not to use alt-right as a euphemism. When the alt-right is racist, you will have to call them racist. When the alt-right is homophobic, you'll have to call them homophobic. If you're stuck with their term, don't use it the way they want you to. Third, you'd have to...
Yes, I'm starting a book club. We went over it a little bit before, but I'll stop here. If you want to screenshot this is the basic thing. It's the Leftist book club. If you do !LBC, it'll be the first book that I'll be reading. So if you want to join along and read that, we will discuss it the first week of December. I don't want to set a hard date yet. I still want to hammer out what the best time and date is for people to be able to come discuss. So yeah, the first one will be the 100-Year War between Palestine and colonialism. In your opinion, what do you find is the most independent news source? It's a great question, Davey boy. I don't really... I can't give you a good answer. I think you can use that like classic... I don't even know if people respect it, which it's kind of my point. If you Google the unbiased news source chart, they put out a new one every like year or so to like try to show you like, well, this is the updated one. Oh God, why is it so low res? Please. Give me a non-low res, low res one. This one's not bad. But yeah, I this is written by somebody who has a bias, as all things innately are. So if you want actual good, quote unquote unbiased, the most unbiased thing, this sounds kind of fascist. The most unbiased thing is the truth. And so you need to be able to, that I don't mean that in a fascistic way, obviously, but this is what Twitter used to be great for. Follow a lot of like journalists, like local journalists who are putting out stuff. Understand their biases and sort of do that. When I say local, I meant to say independent journalists. And Twitter used to be great for this. It's still like the best place to do it. Who are doing independent journalism, because that's potentially, obviously, they're the least biased by a corporation. Because every corporation, like you said, a lot of these are going to be owned by the big three companies. So they have a permanent bias against their own capital. But when it comes to that, I don't know. You can't just be like, well, CNN is non-biased. Fox News is not. You can't say that. They're all just, corporations in a trench coat. The best way to get news, in my opinion, is following independent journalists on whatever topic you want to learn more about. Which sucks. It really sucks that that's the best way. We don't have a reliable news source. And I will say NPR is not terrible. I used to listen to them. They're pretty, I think they're normally pretty close to here. Thank you, Finn's mom. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm proud of you. But they get a little bit of a liberal bias sometimes on certain issues, like when it comes to social issues. And then they get a conservative bias a little bit when it comes to economic issues sometimes. So NPR is not bad. I think if you want a good one, AP is the one that you can probably trust the most when it comes to articles. NPR is not bad if you want to listen to stuff, although I guess they do articles. But I would trust stuff from NPR and AP, the Associated Press, and then try to verify yourself what's happening with independent journalism. Okay, so let us get into here.
Cover how to engage with the alt-right, which is actually pretty straightforward. Don't. The reasoning there may not be immediately obvious, especially if you, say, once devoted an entire video to the importance of talking to anti-feminist hate mobs. So you'll have to explain. You have since then learned how such debates with the far right often go, thanks to conversations with people who have more lived experience than you. If some guy on Twitter shoots his mouth off about how, for instance, only precious snowflakes would care about how many black women are getting roles in Hollywood, maybe you push back on that. Maybe the conversation gets heated. Maybe you debunk his arguments, make your points, and he walks away in a huff. For you, the interaction is over. But for folks on the far right, it often isn't. The far right keeps mental lists of people who represent the things they're mad about. The symbol of the liberal media, the symbol of video game feminism, the symbol of trans activism. FYI, these are usually women and people of color. And these people aren't people to them. They're just icons for a thing. And the way they express anger about those things is to attack those people. So while you leave the argument and have a lie down, eat a sandwich, feel better, he maybe vents his frustration by hacking the email of whomever represents black women in Hollywood this week. This doesn't happen every time, or even most times, but it happens reliably enough that anytime you try and debate with a reactionary, you are gambling with someone else's safety. The purpose of debating these people is not to change their minds, but to stem the flow of lies and bad rhetoric. The alt-right is always recruiting, always trying to expand its audience. And there are ways to reach their intended audience without engaging them directly. It's not only safer.
Thank you, Flutie. If you want to know about the book club, go ahead and give this a screenshot. We'll be starting at the first of November, or I'm sorry, the first week of December, we'll be discussing the book that I just linked, if you're interested in joining the book club.
It's often more effective to cut out the middleman, speak past them, not to them. If your purpose is to actually change the mind of a reactionary, well, doing that right is tricky, and doing it wrong can have serious consequences. So until you know for sure how to change the mind of a reactionary without fucking somebody else's life up, do not engage. Once you've got those 3 bits cleared up, the rest of your announcement is just housekeeping. Because there are a whole lot of topics to discuss, you'll want to keep the videos short and to the point, and you'll have to alternate them with videos in your more usual wheelhouse, or else after a few months of nothing but this, videos would just be 5-minute blocks of sustained screaming. You'll try to release them in batches when the subjects interlock, but you'll also try not to make any promises about your schedule. And you'll have to clarify.
He does have a tendency to ramble a little bit, so we don't need to go through that. So yeah, that's the introduction to the alt-right playbook. I think it's a really great video series, and I've learned a lot from it. I've used this exact YouTube series actually to help radicalize my mom. If you want, Josh, I can help you make a Google form for people to submit if they want to participate and what dates. That Sal, that would have been great. I don't think it's necessary. I think realistically, I'm just going to pick a day that's later at night. Because I understand, like today, when I start at 2, I appreciate the offer. Maybe in the future we can look into something like that. Right now, I mean, there's only be a few people participating anyway. And like, but like today, I started at 2, and obviously I know like some people are still working based on the time zones and stuff like that. Anywho, this playlist actually helped radicalize my mom with. We had a 12-hour drive from Mississippi to Illinois, and I played this and talked about it with her. She has, this past like 2 years, has gained a lot of autonomy when it comes to being a worker and what that means, and being somebody who, is a slave to capitalism her whole life, as we all are, obviously. And I think that's awesome. And I think if maybe you aren't personally being radicalized by this, I think this series is great for you to use as well. And also just sharpen your lexicon. So here he's going to be talking about controlling the conversation, content warning, discussion of R-word and SA.
Say, for the sake of argument, there's this guy who's running for president. It's late in the campaign, and one of his chief liabilities as a candidate is that over a dozen women have reported that he sexually assaulted them, among them his ex-wife and a 13-year-old girl. His candidacy depends on convincing enough of the voting public that these accusations are false. But then, shortly before the election, audio leaks of this guy, backstage on TV and unaware his mic was on, not just admitting to, but bragging about kissing and groping women without their consent. So the first question is, how's he gonna spin that? And the answer comes in the form of an internet apology video where he begins with something like, I don't know, I never said I was a perfect person or claimed to be someone that I'm not. At which point, you pause the video like, dude, yes you have. You have done literally both of those things. So you pop on over to Twitter and comment on how this guy's apology opens with two
I don't know why the
untrue
subtitles
statements. And like flies to manure, his supporters show up in your mentions. And they say, that audio is from years ago. What he means is he doesn't speak that way about women anymore. To which you point out, yes he does. He did like 2 months ago. And they say, well, his opponent's husband actually does those things. And you reply, those allegations are far less substantiated, and if they're true, the candidate's not responsible for her husband's misconduct, and if they're true, that doesn't make this guy innocent.
So I'm sure he'll get to this later. This is something that, so he'll be talking a lot about Trump in this video, obviously. Like I said, multiple videos he'll be talking about Trump. This series came out while Trump was president. But this is something that a lot of just manipulators do, and conservatives do as well. People who are arguing in bad faith, you'll hear that phrase a lot, which is you've made a statement, you've made a declaration of, in this instance, Trump is bad, or in a different context, like this action that you're doing, I'm upset with. I don't like how you take away my phone at night. Because you say I'm addicted to it or I'm on it too much. They will then, instead of focusing on that initial question, relate it to something completely different that may also be easily refutable. So if the person responds, well, you're addicted to your phone, you're now going to be like, well, I'm not addicted to my phone. I only use it like, when I'm waiting for food to get done cooking or if I'm in the bathroom. And then he'll, instead of being like, hey, true, correct, right? You nailed me on that. The next spin, in order to get you off of the original question, is going to be something to the length of, I just saw you using your phone while we were eating dinner. And then it's, well, that's because my mom called me. Well, you can't just make up excuses. And then see how far away we've gone from the person saying, hey, I don't like how you take away my phone. It feels controlling. This is a very common technique. And it can feel like you're talking to a crazy person, or like, that's why when you watch those like gotcha interviews that like Klepper does, I can't remember Klepper's first name, Adam Klepper, Jordan Klepper, where he goes and he talks to the conservatives, and you see him talking to the conservatives, and they just talk in circles because we're like, haha, they're idiots, they don't know what they're talking about. This is the perfect way to combat it, where he always brings it back to the original question, but we can ask, who is that for? Because it's for us, the audience, to be like, wow, that MAGA guy's an idiot. That he just said that he doesn't like their presidents to do crimes, and then Jordan Klepper listed out all the crimes, one and own. Like, this guy doesn't care. He's not changing his mind. So I'm sure he gets into that here. But I think this is a really interesting thing where we can take something that he's describing as an alt-right like usage of how they control narratives, and you can see how it gets used in a day-to-day or in other situations.
And they start leaning in on the, why do liberals make such a big deal about coarse language? Strong women can handle themselves. In real life, there are no content warnings. And all you can do is lean back in your seat, laughing to yourself. What kind of debate is this even? There's not a single thing your opposition has said that isn't provably false or irrelevant, and they change the subject every 30 seconds. They clearly have no actual position and are just grasping at straws because they can see they're losing. So you don't really have to pay them any mind. They won't endure. Thing is, they have. Not only does this manner of argument endure, it keeps winning elections. Why? Folks, let me introduce you to one of the most foundational strategies of reactionary rhetoric. Control the conversation. Much of what we discuss in this series will come back to this in one way or another. Now let's be clear, a lot of the alt-right is okay with or even in favor of sexual assault against women. but it's not politically viable to say so. So if their guy is a serial harasser and they want people to vote for him, they have to control that conversation. They have to let people think that a vote for this guy is not a vote for sexual assault. How it works is every one of these bad arguments is a subtle attempt to change the subject. Now, changing the subject mid-debate isn't a remarkable phenomenon. We call that moving the goalposts. And if that's all that was going on, I wouldn't waste your time making a whole video about it because that video already exists. Link in the down there part. Controlling the conversation is a bit more sophisticated. To understand it, we have to look at how the goalposts move and where they get moved to. Regarding how the goalposts move, you must understand this. Bad arguments are not a bug, they're a feature. I mean, what are the positions in this debate? On one side, it's this guy admitted to groping women, and on the other, it was all just locker room talk. And trying to convince people that a guy who said he groped people didn't actually grope people is not a favorable argument for his supporters to have.
This is also a result of people, you see it a lot in conservatism. And when I say conservatism, I'm not just speaking about American Republicans either. You'll see this on people who are ostensibly, Democrats or, liberals as well. When somebody has a belief that they know is probably not great to have and they're trying to defend it, they look for like simple truths, right? And so what a lot of people who I believe who they do it in bad faith, or they're just ignorant, what they'll do is they'll look for a simple truth to rule the world. A really good example of this is What is a Woman? The extremely transphobic and, misogynistic documentary that was put out, was it 3 years ago? It's a question you'll see a lot in the trans debate, by Matt Walsh. And the entire premise of this hour plus, documentary, if you want to call it that, is how come liberals can't tell me what a woman is? And even though in that documentary he cuts out or even features parts where he's speaking with scholars and professors and really, really intelligent people on the topic, and they describe to him what a woman is in their terms, he'll literally be like, you're taking so long. Why can't you just tell me what a woman is? Because conservatism and bad faith arguments, they look for a simple truth. And we can relate this back to the Trump example because there are people who are claiming that there was sexual assault done by Donald Trump, right? And then all Trump has to say is, I didn't do that. And that's the simple truth of like, well, he didn't do it. He said he didn't do it. And you get into that, like, they have like this weird plausible deniability where it's like, well, he didn't say he did it, so you're just making stuff up. Or they do that with like with racism. They'll boil it down of like, well, saying the N-word is racist, although some people won't even admit that that's racist. But calling someone the N-word is racist. I didn't call someone the N-word. I just said, and then they'll say something that what they're saying is a racist sentence, but because they didn't explicitly say the racist word, they'll not be able to describe it to themselves as being racist because they want that simple truth.
So they just don't have it. If their position is he didn't really do what he said he did, they've learned never to make that argument. They make the next argument. Because if we were to agree that it was all just locker room talk, the next argument would be, and he doesn't talk that way anymore, or and his opponent's husband actually does those things, or and coarse language has no negative effects on women. The trick is to treat you like you've already agreed to their position, and make claims that treat it as a given. Cognitive scientists would call this presupposing a frame. If you're on whether or not he still speaks that way to women, you've unwittingly agreed that that's what you're talking about. And that's why it bent.
No, absolutely, Davey boy. It's what it feels like. Is like anything that's any amount of nuance to somebody who is trying to control the conversation is seen as like you not being sure of your answer. It's why when doctors or scientists in general, I should say, go to testify on a case and anything, and so they can't lie. Right? I mean, theoretically, they can't lie, even though they can, obviously. And they say like, I shoot you in the head with 10 bullets. Mr. Science Man, is it a 100% chance that you die? And any scientist worth their salt would say no. Because you never say an absolute in science. And there's nuance to that conversation. Is I can say the data suggests that 95% of blank is happening. And conservatives will say, well, there's 5% that's not. Or I'll say there's a 95% chance it's happening. And I'll be like, well, you can't say with 100% certainty. So and it's like, well, yeah, scientists don't do that. They never give 100%. They never give truths unless it's proven, which is very, very hard to do in the scientific community. All that being said, that's why when you look at the conversation about like you can ask, what is a chair? Right? And you can say like, well, you mean it's a thing you sit on with 4 legs, right? It's like, that's a super simple question. What is a chair? I can so easily define what a chair is. And it's like, okay, 4 legs and you sit on it. Sick. Yeah. Here you go. Is this a chair? It's got 4 legs and I sit on it. And you're like, oh, I mean, come on. Obviously, chairs aren't alive. You're like, okay, chair, 4 legs, you sit on it. What if it's just like, I'm sure you can come up with more examples. Not a great example on my end, but you get the point. Is the supposing that an argument needs to be simple to be true is very common.
Benefits the right to insist that language is harmless despite a wealth of contradictory data, because if liberals provide...
The thing is, Hardquark, you could argue a horse is a chair. You absolutely could, that a horse performs as a chair in that consequence, or in that situation. Absolutely.
The data, it gets them talking about speech. Bad arguments are bait, because liberals can't resist digging into them. They don't like letting false statements slide, and often they won't even notice if that statement is off topic. So there are few better ways to get Democrats talking about what you want them to talk about than to defend your position badly. Regarding where the goalposts move, let's step back and ask ourselves, what is the purpose of debate? The liberal conception of debate is usually along the lines of Joseph Joubert's adage, the aim of argument or of discussion should not be victory, but progress. You're thinking Plato and Glaucon, or maybe Debate Club. 2 sides debate until one side wins, or until a third conclusion is reached together. Either way, the goal of debate is to arrive at the truth. That's not what debate means on the right. There, debate is a chance to perform strength, integrity, and certainty. There, you don't debate until a victor is declared. You debate as long as you can keep eyeballs on you, forever if possible. There, the truth doesn't win because nobody wins, not in any formal way. You may scoff at that, but let's think about it. This is how political debates are structured in the US, where 2 candidates come in all...
Hey, I'm glad someone called out Davy Boy. If my grandmother had wheels, should be a bicycle. Is that a reference? Because I understand what you're saying. It is a reference to something. Yeah. It's just so funny.
Already knowing everything they're going to say, where it's political suicide to concede any point or find any compromise, and where who won is up to the voters. In such a framework, truth and falsity don't exist. All that matters is how much of the audience agrees with you. And if that's your framework, then what's in your best interest is to steer the conversation swiftly and efficiently to something you and your opponent will never agree on, because that gives you the most opportunities to look firm in front of an adversary. The value of turning a conversation about sexual assault into a conversation about sexist language is that the effect of sexist language is a place where the left and the right are fundamentally at odds. This is something Republicans can argue about till the end of time, because the left's understanding of systemic issues does not jive with the right's views on personal responsibility. Yes, of course, if the president spoke this way in the White House, it might be alienating to any woman who works there, but the right sees this as a personal failing on the part of the woman, not a systemic failing on the part of men. Sure, he shouldn't have said that, but really, she needs to lean in, and all the...
It's also something you'll hear, he said there, like, oh, you need to lean into it. But a lot of people will say, like, well, why are you getting triggered? And that's where, like, the birthplace of the godforsaken word of triggered really started, is like, it's just a word. It's just a slur. Like, it's just, I just said words. Why are you getting offended at words? It's your fault that you're getting offended at my words. Also, if you want to relate it to like Jonah Hill and his whole thing that came out recently with his ex-girlfriend, where he says like, these are just my rules. And if you don't like them, that's on you and you can leave. But that means you're getting upset at just some rules, and that would actually be controlling of you if you didn't like my rules.
The articles, all the data, all the reports that say that's not how this works in practice, they are useless in the framework of a performative Twitter argument or a 1-hour TV debate. A proper understanding of institutional sexism just takes longer than that. Now, I should stress, because it will be true for most of these videos, this isn't a master plan cooked up by some shadowy alt-right cabal. Most of the people who argue in this fashion, not all, but most, are simply doing what works without necessarily knowing why it works. It's picked up through observation or by trial and error. And it's not exclusive to the right. Everybody does this sometimes. It's just that the right has made it core to their entire platform. Anyway, why would anyone use this framework? Well, if your opposition has facts on their side, then you need a framework where facts aren't important. But more broadly, if the goal is to win over the public, then the public does respond to honesty, but they also respond to moral certainty. And the right tends to sell certainty better than the left sells truth. This is what they're good at. Thanks
for checking out, Finn's Mom. Thanks for becoming a Patreon member.
Where opposing sides never agree because agreement is impossible. And since agreement is impossible, you never have to compromise. And
if you have any issues with setting up anything on Patreon, shoot us an email at judgyspot@gmail.com and we can help you out.
Politics isn't about compromise, it's just about outnumbering your competition by any means necessary and obstructing them at every turn when they outnumber you. There is comfort in the idea that people are just fundamentally different, and that they owe each other nothing. And if victory is defined by holding your own, then the Democrats' desire for compromise is a weakness that can be exploited.
This is why if you ever hear me complain about Democrats, especially in the context of legislature being passed or anything like that, and it's like, oh man, if only Kirsten Sinema didn't thumbs down that $15 minimum wage. It's like, by the Democratic Party choosing to try to reach for compromise on something that if you truly believed was moral and good and correct, in order to capitulate to the other side to get some sort of compromise, you are admitting that you don't actually hold the value of something being good and moral and correct. Right? If I think it's always good, like you need to get 5 glasses of water a day. You need to get 5 glasses of water a day minimum. It's the healthiest amount of water. And then someone's like, oh, but I don't like drinking water. Can I do 3 glasses? And they're like, yeah, you can do 4. Like, well, then you didn't care about the 5? Because you just said that's the important thing. And that's why I get so frustrated with Democrats. Obviously, Republicans in America, the politicians I'm speaking of, are vile humans. But a lot of the times, Democrats are literally just the same position ultimately.
On a gut level, the right knows what debate means on the left, knows that the left wants to meet in the middle. So all they...
Penzeys Spice Factory? This is going to sound crazy. I was grocery shopping yesterday. I know, crazy, right? And I went to the spice aisle. We had to get vinegar and baking soda, whichever one of those makes more sense. And I went into the spice aisle, and I think maybe for the first time in my life, I breathed in through my nose. Like I smelled, and I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome. I was like, I don't know if I've ever like smelled the spice aisle. I guess I always just don't think about it. But boy, did I totally get what you're saying, Sal. I would love to have a spice factory right outside my job. You were making a volcano. Technically, I was. Whatever is it? Baking soda makes the volcano. It's like an old trick. Instead of using Drano in your sinks, you can put in a cup of baking soda powder. Oh God, which one? Vinegar and baking soda. Man discovers sense is huge if true. Did you guys know there's a 5th sense called smell? You put down the baking soda into the drain, and then you put in a cup of vinegar on top. and then you seal it in there with like a drain stopper, and then it just sort of works on the stuff that's down there, and it's a way less damaging to the environment form of Drano. You know, it's like natural Drano. There's not compromise of morality. Imagine saying meet me halfway on racism. Exactly. I totally agree.
They have to do is bait the left into having a discussion on their terms and then keep insisting that they should find common ground. You could work with us if you'd only try a little harder. Because the rules of that debate, where you concede points and look for compromise, in their world, make the left look weak. And as long as the right controls the terms of debate, conciliatory...
I'll tell you what, I didn't know what a Turkish slice pizza, and I thought that was like a threat. Like I was gonna, like it was, I don't know, in my mind a Turkish slice pizza was like a meat cutter. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Where you put like the slice of ham on and you cut. And then I realized what a Turkish spice bazaar is. I'm like, no, I agree. I would love, I'm not one of those white people that doesn't spice their food. That's not what I'm trying to say. It was just like specifically in Walmart in the grocery section. I was just like, oh my God, what the hell is that? That's amazing. He just said something I was going to say, but I wanted to talk about, but now I forgot.
Loses. That's how they control the conversation. Move the entire debate to their framework using a bad argument as the worm on a hook. Now, understanding this, you may find yourself tempted to engage in that debate because, knowing the rules, you think you can dig in your heels, put on a better show, win over more of the audience. But the one piece of advice I have for you is never take the bait. Don't let them turn you away from the real subject. This guy assaulted women, and that has nothing to do with speech. Theirs is not a game that can be won by progressives. Even if you ruined them for some ignorant comment on the First Amendment, you'd only be legitimizing their rules, and those rules do not lead to a functional society. They are based on the idea that differing types of people can't work together. So one just has to beat out all the others. You can't expect to run on those principles and not get flooded with Nazis, homophobes, and handsy rapists. So get it out of your head that you can win in a debate with the far right, that you can beat them at their own game. If you find yourself playing their game, you've already lost.
I think this is super important. Like he talked about, can I request you a song and you read it? What is this? What is this? How is this the second person this stream to come in and be like, yo, come listen to, what was the first guy? He was like, he was from like Orlo, Switzerland. I don't know, whatever what's Iceland? Was he Icelandic? Why are we just getting people coming and being like, I got a fire song that you need to listen to right now? I know you're in the middle of talking about something, but you need to listen to my song. He talked about not getting baited into arguing with these people. Hello, Missy Melissa, welcome. And I think that's really interesting to do. If you are genuinely interested in trying to convince somebody, like say you have an aunt or an uncle who you feel like can be convinced, because a lot of it is they need to want to be convinced, or be able to see, have empathy and see stuff. So you can't come in and start calling them, if you're interested in convincing them. I think calling them racist and misogynistic and stuff like this will automatically turn them off, which is obviously it's totally valid to call a racist person racist. Don't get me wrong. But if you were interested in changing their mind, start with something that you have like evidence or like proof of, or you feel like you can have them get a hard position on, which is, in this example, Donald Trump was caught on tape talking about sexually assaulting somebody. And then the person might respond with, oh, that's just locker room talk. And then instead of getting into the ticky-tacky of like whether or not that's okay and like what man actually speaks like that, just say, do you think it's okay to sexually assault women? And get them to answer that question. And whenever they try to change the subject, just don't change the subject, genuinely. Because he did that. And now he's running for president. Do you think that's okay? And either they agree that sexually assaulting a woman is okay to do and still be a person who deserves to hold an office of extreme power. And then you're like, well, you're too far gone. What do you mean? Do you hear what you just said? Or you can get through to them and have them realize, like, no, what I'm defending is an insane thing.
And win.
Missy Melissa, we're just talking leftist shit. If you want to join the Leftist Book Club, this is what we will be. If you want to screenshot this is the general outline of what we'll be doing. And if you do !LBC, you will see the book that we'll be discussing in the first week of December on Amazon there if you want to read as well. And so I don't have the date yet, but we will be talking about that book in the first week of December. Okay. So this next one is obviously going to be tied to the last conversation. The last one was controlling the conversation, how conservatives and alt-right people try to control the conversation away from you. And this is never play defense.
For the sake of argument, there's this feminist media critic whose work you respect. Being an internet-savvy human in the information age, you sometimes share your opinions of her work on your various social media platforms. And you've noticed, whenever you speak positively of her, many different people come out to yell the same handful of things at you. It usually starts with, how can you support that con woman after she stole thousands of dollars from you?
So this video, you should do progressive picks, book reviews. That's great. I would love to, and maybe Sal, eventually you can help me with this. I would love to get a spot where we can do, like, obviously I don't want to be just the person picking the books. So maybe we can set up some sort of Google submissions, form submissions thing of people recommending books. And then we can do a vote on the books. Like maybe I'll pick 3 out of 3 or 5, and then we can do a vote live as to what the next book will be. Because I would absolutely love to get more recommendations
from people. And you say, no, she didn't.
So this video is going to be talking about something that will be colloquially, you might have heard it called Gamergate if you're terminally online like me. It was a huge movement in the mid 2000s, specifically targeted or specifically branching off of targeted hate of one woman. So 2014, 2015 era. This is where we had the almost renaissance and the new birth, and of online internet hate. So this is where terms that started like soy boy and beta and like that stuff became, well, maybe more just soy boy. But the Gamergate was, like when you see a picture of The Last of Us 2 and people are complaining about it, or you see like Aloy from Horizon Forbidden West of this, people criticizing modern game design, like, is it just me or is Sony making their lead female protagonist look masculine as hell? Barely no curves or rough non-feminine features, unlike the average woman. Like cough cough, The Last of Us 2's Ellie, which, she's a teenager, so that's kind of insane to say that. Just saying my hashtag 2 cents. Pick from the game on the left, family on the right, hire fans, LOL. So shit like this was really given a new renaissance in 2015 through the Gamergate era. So that's just a little background on who he's talking about specifically.
Steal anything. She ran a crowdfunding campaign that people contributed willingly to, and overwhelmingly, those people seem satisfied with their donations. And they say, yeah, she asked for $100,000 for a shitty little project. And you say, no, she got $100,000 because people got excited about her work and gave her more than she asked for. But the original pitch was only $10K. Also, how many times have you given that number to people without looking it up? And they say, yeah, she asked for $10K and then never finished anything. And you say, no, she finished the project earlier this year. Of course it took longer than it was originally pitched. You get 10 times what you ask for, and you're kind of obligated to make a bigger project, because if you didn't, that would be running away with 90 grand. Now, by this time, you've noticed your interlocutor's position has changed from she stole from people to she asked too much to begin with to she took too long to deliver, as though these are all the same argument. And you also notice the pattern of the conversation. He says something short, quippy, and wrong. You give a detailed correction. He says something else short, quippy, wrong, and only tangentially related to his last point, and the cycle repeats itself. This goes on and on. And it's not you've noticed just this discussion. You find this manner of argument often when you express left-of-center beliefs. You talk about the election, someone says you vote Democrat because you must have a conservative father you hate. You talk about polyamory, someone says if you have more than one female partner, you must be a sexist. Or they just say you're faking a non-regional accent.
Yeah, thank you for stopping by. I don't know how to say Rezingera. There's so many ways you could put emphasis on different parts of your name that I feel like would completely change it. But thank you for stopping in. !LBC if you want to see the book we'll be reading and be discussing in about a month.
Yeah. The running theme here is all these people who ostensibly want a frank exchange of ideas spend a lot more time making accusations than asking questions. Because why ask what you believe when they can tell you what you believe and make you correct them? And if you ever don't go to the trouble of correcting them, must be because they're right. And you're not naive, you see what's going on here. This isn't about conversation. No, this is about boxes. When you say something cogent that they don't agree with, and they get the sinking feeling that you might start making sense, they need a reason not to listen to you. So they reach for a box to stick you in. Dishonest feminism, fake progressivism, daddy issue liberalism. No one in those boxes is worth listening to, which means as long as they've got you in one, they're not at risk of having their minds changed.
This is I mean, I've had this happen to me multiple times in my life, I'm sure, and I'm a white man, so I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people, even before a conversation can start, if you're a part of an oppressed group as well. Obviously, gamers are the number one oppressed group in the world, and then, you know, everybody else after that. And then way at the bottom is me, straight white male. But I don't know how many times I've been talking to someone and I'll say, and you see it online a lot too. Like I'll tell you, even on my Cartnarks video, there was people who would leave comments because obviously, if you're not aware of my Cartnarks video at !Hash on, should be whatever, Hash on. We'll just youtube.com/@HashOnYT. On this video, obviously I try to, it's a play on Hassan, like Hassan Piker. I model a lot of my layout to be like Hassan Piker. My editing is similar to his VOD rewatches, not his actual VODs. But I got so many comments on this from people saying, wow, you clearly are a Hassan fan. Therefore your discussion is invalidated. Right. And I guess I started this out by saying, I don't believe Hassan fans are oppressed, but people will put you in boxes. I've been at work, debating, you know, talking to coworkers about something, and I'll say something along the lines of, oh yeah, well, I voted Hillary in 2016. They're like, oh, so you're a Democrat. Yeah. I can't trust anything you say now. Or like, oh, well, yeah, but you're just a guy. Like, it happens a lot. Like, oh, you're just a guy. So your opinion is not valid. Oh, you're a woman. Your opinion is not valid. Oh, well, you're bisexual. You're queer. Well, your opinion's not valid. You must be one of those queers, right? Stuff like that. It happens a ton. It happens an absolute ton as a way to invalidate just entire swaths of people. They're not even arguing with you. They're trying to find a portion of you that they can disrespect and therefore invalidate your entire lived existence.
This whole thing isn't even an argument with you. Not really. They're presenting themselves with arguments for why they don't have to listen to you. So your first reflex is to defy their expectations. Actually, my dad was a draft-dodging hippie who told me he loved me every day. And I never said what genders my partners are, but I promise.
Being young is something that happens a lot. It's like, oh, well, you're young. What do you know? And conservatives love that argument, right? The conservative thought of trust your elders and stuff like that is very, very ingrained in American culture. At least it used to be. I don't know if it is as much anymore. And that's something that even when a parent or an elder in any case is wrong, and it happened to me growing up, if anybody older than me, like an adult, was telling me something and I was like, well, no, you're wrong. It was always, you're a kid, you're young, you don't know. I'm older than you. And you'll get that a lot in public unknowingly as well, I feel like. I don't get it as much anymore because now I'm an old shit that's 30. But it definitely can happen.
They're all feminists. As for my accent, actually, I don't know what to do with the accent thing, but the point is, I refuse to fit in your box. And if they can't put you in one, if they can't dismiss you outright, they'll have to engage with your argument. But if you've spent any time arguing with angry dudes online, and it is mostly dudes, you know what I'm about to say. They don't. This accusatory, condescending attitude never falters, because a technique that has permeated anti-progressivism is to never play defense. Now don't get me wrong, what I said about the right fitting the left into simplified boxes as a way of preserving their own egos, I do think that's a thing, at least for many people much of the time. And I think the reassurance it brings is why the technique stays so popular. But that framing is about how individual people are feeling in isolated moments, and leaves out the larger game that's being played. Because there is a long-term strategic value to never playing defense, and it's less to do with arguments than with attitude. From your perspective, this debate about the feminist is a joke. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He comes in hot without confirming any of his assumptions. The whole conversation is you repeatedly schooling an ignorant dipshit. But that's only if you're the fool who listens to what's actually being said. Never play defense is a strategy that looks past language to posture. The tone, the word choice, even the expressions on your faces. If you half focus your eyes and look not at the words, but at the flow of the conversation, you can see the dynamic at play.
Okay, what does this say? Wolf fuck your eyes? Is that what we're reading? Is this like a Rorschach test? I read wolf fuck your eyes.
He says his short, quippy statement, and you give your detailed rebuttal. He then picks a single point from your response and attacks that.
No, I don't know. Did you half focus your eyes while reading half focus your eyes? I'm pretty sure it said wolf fuck your eyes.
The new subject. Now, to an onlooker, the logical brain would register that he's leaving 90% of your argument on the table, and that by changing positions, he's conceding he lost the first round. But the lizard brain notices that he's always making the accusations, always in the dominant position, that he's always acting, and you're always reacting. Regardless of what is said, he displays all the outward signs of winning. So on a purely emotional level, he leaves the impression of being right. And I have never had an argument look like this that wasn't in public. This is a technique that means speaking not so much to the other person as to the people watching. Liberals tend to operate as though voters are beings of pure reason and neglect that rational people still have emotions, and those emotions factor into what they believe. And that long after this argument is over, when people only half remember what was said, what lingers on is what impressions the speakers made. Ronald Reagan coined...
Here you go. Entertain them. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Hello?
Yeah, we'll not have you on screen with big old Ronald Reagan.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Sorry about Ronald. Josh has to pee. I had a really interesting experience just a few minutes ago. Hello, Dapstar MP. Hello, I am strange. Hello, Sal. So, as most of you know, I work in an art department. I'm a student worker there for my professor. And I was down there talking to my art history professor and was about to leave. And then I heard a really hard knock on the door. So where the art department is, there are doors that can go outside. There's some exits. And on the outside, there are no handles to get in for obvious reasons. But I heard a really hard knock on the door. And so we went over there. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck to expect because no one's supposed to be down there except for me and my art history professor. And it was this guy who said he was an art teacher in a couple towns over. And he was like, yeah, I was just looking to see if I could borrow some glazes. And like me and my art history professor were staring at each other and like we didn't know what to do. But we ended up giving him some, even though they're like really expensive. We gave him like 4 of them, and it was just such a weird experience.
Who was it?
Art teacher from a couple towns over. I don't know. Yeah, and they're Amico glazes. So I don't know. Just interesting. He was jonesing for some glaze. Yeah. Yeah, and we shouldn't have let him take them, but like my professor wasn't there. He showed up. Like we had no idea what to do, so we were just like I hope we get him back. If not, then he owes the art department like $100.
That's pretty crazy.
But yeah, he took 4, and they're like maybe $25 each. I think I'll have to check. Also, like any people who are versed in ceramics, I need help because we have had so much trouble with the glazes not turning out how they're supposed to in the kiln. And I don't know. Like all my test tiles turned out like shit. So I'm kind of upset about it, but anybody in ceramics have any advice?
Mr. Ceramic, are you still in chat?
Mr. Ceramic, are you in chat? That's okay, Sal, but thank you. Thank you. Also, I'm going to an art show later today.
Art show? Are you?
Yeah. Yeah, my art professor and my art history professor are going to be in there.
When are you leaving?
It's 5:30.
You're leaving at 5:30?
So the glazes were in the art department when my art professor got here. So it's possible they're a little old, but they're all lead free. They say lead free on the front of the labels.
No, it's lead free. It's like no tears shampoo.
Tears?
Yeah.
Wait, it's not tears?
No, it's no tears. But you don't like me yelling at you?
Like they turn out.
They're lead free.
So there's one called oatmeal, Amico oatmeal for anyone who knows what I'm talking about. It's supposed to be a yellow. It turned out gray. It came out gray. I don't know what the fuck we did wrong. Josh just pushed me away.
I was just moving away from the chat.
Yeah, they're different colors.
I feel like gray, unironically, is closer to oatmeal though.
Shut up.
Like in color. I don't know if I would describe it.
Thank you, Sal. Hard to appreciate for you right now. Yeah, there's a bunch of trouble, a bunch of drama happening in there, but I'm not gonna talk about it because if I do talk about it, I'll probably say something I'm not supposed to say. Because I'm really bad at keeping things inside.
Trouble, drama. What was this? The show choir department?
What the hell? I was a choir kid my entire school career. It was very fun.
Name one choir.
I can't say because I'll dox myself. SWAT Master, I don't know when I'm going to be on the pod next. I've been really busy. I have a couple really stupid classes that I'm taking. Okay, all right. So they're not stupid. I have shit due every 3 days, so it pisses me off.
Also, she was just on, yeah? I guess it's been a while, like 4 weeks.
I mean, I can be on
Not
sooner.
tonight.
Oh, yeah, not tonight because I'm going to be at an art show. And I'm going to see people in art.
Bart.
Hard guac. Okay. I'm really hungry, so I'm going to get out of here and make something to eat. Bye. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah. Pisses and kisses.
Trigger warning. Ronald Reagan. Okay. Like Will.
Oh. You're so tall.
Yeah, I am, aren't I? Look how tall I am, folks. Hey. Have I told Chad about my new kicks?
I don't know.
I got new shoes and they're sick. Come on. Come on. Come on. Why can't I click on it? I'm wearing them is the thing. Where are they at? These right here. I'm just making sure it doesn't have like my location on. What the hell? Where did it go? I got these. Well, I got them in red. But they're sick. They're Converse, but they have a sole. And they're so comfortable. Because I love wearing Converse, but they hurt my feet so bad when you wear them for more than 12 steps. Especially because I have flat feet, or I have a high arch, I mean. So my feet just kill me. But these are fucking sick. They are so comfortable. And unfortunately, these are actually women's shoes. Well, they only hold them up to a men's 11, and I wear a size 12. So I actually had to go and create like a custom Converse. So they're big old clown shoes. Your high school kids wear those? Yes, I'm cool. I'm hip. They're so comfortable. I got them because they're comfortable. You know what they say about big arches? Bad feet, plantar fasciitis. When I wear these, I'm the same height as Erica now. It's like wearing boots. They have a good chunk on them, so it's pretty sick. Anywho, back to Ronald Reagan. Into the alt-right playbook.
The phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing. The trick is, if he's always accusing, then you're always explaining. This technique of winning by looking like you're winning isn't new, and historically, it's been used by both parties. But modern liberals seem especially susceptible to it because it plays on one of their big weaknesses, which is, and I say this with love, the liberal fantasy of putting someone in their place. Anytime a free speech warrior gets the Bill of Rights quoted to them, when racists get historical accuracy explained by an actual historian, liberals take screen caps. We put it on Storify. We pass that shit around like it's theater popcorn. We live for the day an ignorant prick gets dunked on.
This goes both ways. Although I guess you could argue that it's still liberalism, but I mean, how many SJW owned clips exist in the world? Like millions. I mean, literally, like multiple channels today have careers based off of like some of their SJW getting owned compilations, a la like H3. Like a lot of his stuff was centered around that. So the right does this as well. Although you could argue that's liberalism. Like the liberal belief of like every single thing is like people getting owned is like, I just, the meme of Ben Shapiro, you just got owned in the intellectual marketplace of ideas, stuff like that.
I remind you, this was the central conceit of an entire TV show.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. What would a good price for her be? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from two different threads? Think about those questions, would you? One last thing. While you may be mistaking this for your monthly meeting of the ignorant tight-ass club, in this building when the president stands, nobody sits.
Let's go!
But let me ask you, in all these scenarios, who's doing all the explaining? The reason...
Oh yeah, cringe comps, same thing, right? This is, I mean, if you want to talk about a good discussion on cringe, get Christian talking about it, because Christian loves cringe. I also love cringe. But you're absolutely right. A lot of cringe comps are right-wing coded. And you'll see like decent cringe, like videos where it's like, yeah, okay, that's cringe. And it doesn't feel like it's poking fun, like good-natured cringe. And then the next video will just be somebody like kind of being upset because they're being misgendered. And it's like, oh, hell yeah, that SJW just got owned so hard because they said their pronouns were she, they. And somebody said, actually, they is a plural pronoun. Get owned, liberal. Yeah, it definitely happens on both sides. But liberals love doing this too. Like on the left, the r/atheism Andes are a good example of that too. Of like, actually, you have to prove to me the existence of a god because the base is that nothing exists. It's like, dude, shut up. You're not doing anything other than like making yourself feel good. You're not winning any arguments or like making people actually think about things. You're just being annoying.
Scenes like this are so satisfying is precisely because they activate the emotions. They present a world where giving a detailed explanation looks like winning, and where having one given to you looks like losing. Everyone wants to be Joseph Welch telling off McCarthy.
At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
But the right has learned that if you never look like you're losing, you can convince a lot of people that you're not. And if you keep your statements short and punchy, people will remember what you said better than they remember the long explanation for why it's untrue. If done correctly, you might even convince yourself that you know what you're talking about. Now, again, this is not exclusive to the right. This is how most teenagers argue, regardless of their politics, where it's less important to be right than it is to be better than someone. But mixed with control the conversation, see previous video, the right has a full-bodied cocktail for manipulating how the left argues. But where it gets dangerous is in how the alt-right has capitalized on this. This argument isn't just about sticking a woman in the lying feminism box so she doesn't have to be listened to. It's also signaling to anyone watching what box they should stick her in. Even if an onlooker recognizes that she literally did not con anyone out of their money, the idea that how much she asked for or how long she took to deliver are relevant to her credibility is
Yeah, this is, you say you disengage from your teens trying to argue. Yeah, teenagers do this, young people do this, and I think it's the classic, like, I mean, old people do it too, but it is just the classic of I can own you with facts and logic, like mentality, and then being able to, especially in your instance, get a one-up on an authority figure. But they're doing it the wrong way, and it's a pretty telling example, or a pretty telling like thing, just that teenagers argue that way and then people grow up and continue to argue that way, which is in bad faith. And when he's talking about putting people into boxes, this is why I try not to argue in like our TikTok comment section or any TikTok comment section, because most people who use TikTok are teenagers. They're babies. He said he's an alpha male. Oh no, that's bad. I don't know what I would do if a high schooler told me they were an alpha male. I would probably spontaneously combust. But when he's talking about putting people in boxes to diminish their contributions to an argument or, make them feel lesser than so they don't have to respect them, how many times on TikTok or Twitter or any social media site have you seen this phrase? It's used all the time. Pronouns in bio. You can literally just be talking about something and some dumbass on TikTok will pop in and say, pronouns in bio. And say, yeah, I have my pronouns in my bio. Sure, that way you know to say he, him when you're talking about me. Why would that completely invalidate anything I'm saying? And as this person says, Kathy Alvis Patterson, there is no reasonable answer to the question of what's up with this whole pronouns and bio thing. Some will say transphobic rhetoric and others will say virtue signaling. How is it virtue signaling because I put pronouns in my bio and I have blue hair and I have facial piercings and I'm a vegan? Like, none of these things should innately prevent you from being able to disrespect me as an opinion haver. It's just boxes that you want to put me in. And think about tattoos. I mean, tattoos get memed on a little bit still by old people, but it used to always be, boy, if somebody has a neck tattoo, you can't hire them. And now you can go into stores and people are having neck tattoos because guess what? They're people. Like, they just have a neck tattoo. That's fine. It is the sorry state of our country's politicization of everything that rather than reasonable discussion, do we even have debate competition anymore? We choose to pop out with the newest form of name calling. Kathy, go back to the fucking retirement home. What are you talking about? This is what I meant when I say, like, a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm a centrist. We don't need to have everything be politicized. But by saying this, you are politicizing it. Literally just having pronouns in my bio does not change anything politically. Also, you're fucking 70. Why do you care if there's high school debate? You'll probably die before the fucking first debate gets over. My friend has full sleeves and he's a server, and when he gets really old customers, they're always kind of weird towards him. Oh yeah. I mean, shit, it happens with, like, it happened in the 90s with the, like, Satanic Panic, with, like, D&D and just, like, metal music or rock music. It happens with so much stuff that people are like, oh, you listen to rock music? Or if you want to be, that's like if you're devil worshipping, if you're anti-Christian. Pokemon 2 was demonic, yeah. Or if you want to be racist, oh, you listen to rap music. A really, really good example of prevalent, like racist rhetoric that comes from like a bad place is, I don't really listen to rap music. I don't really listen to rap music. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't listen to rap music? It's just like one of those things that people may not even realize what they're saying is like born in probably a racist undertone. It's like, I don't like rap music. Really? You don't like the entire genre of rap? Do you understand that, like, I bet you your white ass listens to Handlebars by Flowbots, and you're like, no, this is good rap music. And you're like, huh? What? You're just writing off an entire genre because it doesn't sound like I can ride my bike with no handlebars. Like, or like, well, Eminem's good. He's the best rapper. Like, interesting.
Still planted in their heads. It subtly suggests that...
And I say that, those statements can be true. You cannot like rap music. You cannot listen to rap music. You can think Eminem is the best rapper alive. But you'll see people who want to be apolitical or posit themselves as being apolitical, just being like, oh yeah, I don't really like rap, but Eminem's really good. It's like, well, interesting that you're doing that.
Next time they feel threatened by a female media critic, maybe they should look at how much money she makes, how long her work takes.
Oh, the classic line saying that made me think of Lil Nas X and all the conservative people at my work who used to be like, you know, I'm fine with him being gay, but he doesn't have to like rub it in our face the whole time. And it's like, huh? Why does that matter? And also, he's just like kissing a dude. Like, if he kissed a woman, you wouldn't be like, you're rubbing it in my face that you're so straight. Like, you're the one who can't stop thinking about Lil Nas X kissing dudes. Like, oh man, I think it's gross when anybody shows their sexuality in public, and then they go and they go to a strip club and they're just like, whoa, wow. Yeah, there's always a but.
To produce. Maybe they don't have to listen to her because they've got this handy box. So what's most valuable to the alt-right isn't who wins or loses any individual arguments, it's the mechanics of the argument itself. It's the boxes. Over the last several years, the far right has pushed hard on a number of reductive categories. The cultural Marxism box, the reverse racism box, even terms like beta and mangina are just shorthands for the failed masculinity box. The alt-right is a veritable box factory, putting huge swaths of leftist rhetoric, most especially that would rebut their core positions, into categories where they can be summarily ignored. And these myths have power if and only if they are immediately recognizable to a lot of people. And one function of this aggressive posturing is that they want to provoke an argument, to be so pompous that you are itching to publicly take this asshole down, which gives that asshole access to your followers. It's about them introducing a myth to your audience and reinforcing that myth for theirs. And that myth gets spread even when you feel like you're winning. And I can't...
It's a very interesting Venn diagram of your ex's mom's beliefs, because a lot of people won't even like call Kobe like an R-wordist. Like either people forget or they don't believe it. So it's interesting that she was like kind of being a little racist or pretty racist, calling rap music R-word music, but then also being like, well, yeah, because Kobe's a bad person. But it's like, why are you calling out Kobe? Is there anything specific about him as a person that you're doing that? Then he's not a rapper, I can tell you that.
I tell you the best way to deal with this, but I do know one way, which is to keep control of your own story. When someone comes out the gate with accusations, it's a big red flag that they are not arguing in good faith, which means you are not required to argue with them. When someone says something untrue, you can just tell your audience what the truth is without acknowledging the lie or the one repeating it. A detailed explanation does land a lot better when it's not being contrasted with a soundbite. Decide for yourself how your audience gets acquainted with a popular fiction, and never be too proud to delete a comment. In this political climate, these debates have real impact on real people's lives. They are not, in fact, a game of football. So if someone tries to force you to play defense, you don't have to play.
You'll see that too from conservatives. However, in that moment, it depends on what the reason of why you're arguing with somebody, why you're debating with someone. In that moment, you have won in your mind, right? So if a conservative says to you, like, what about all of the Democrats that are going to get to the pizza place and sucking down baby fetuses because they're aborting all of them? And then you say, like, that's not true. And they go, oh, well, if you don't think that's true, you're not even worth debating with. That person thinks they won the debate. So always remember, if you're arguing with an insane person, they will continue to be insane after you argue with them. That's what I always say. Like, it's important to have difficult, interesting conversations with people who are accepting of change. And if they aren't, then you can actually sometimes cause them to spiral further. Thank you, Goozy, for the Gus for the prime sub. Welcome. Let's see here. I know we're gonna skip this because it's just a little video. I do this a lot. I think people mishear things, but he's just talking about, when I'm talking about conservatives or conservatism, if I say conservatives or Republicans, what he is saying and what I am saying are often the political party, the politicians, and not just like everyday Joe down the street, Republican, votes Republican because he lives in a rural part of Illinois. And so if I say conservatives or Republicans are evil people, I'm not saying if you voted Republican, you're innately an evil person. I think that's very easy to slip into fascistic rhetoric like that. This is how you get liberals who, when Texas froze over, were saying, well, they voted for it. I think that's an absolutely abhorrent way to think about things. I believe my innate core philosophy as my position as a leftist is, if we supply people with proper societal baselines, then stuff like homophobia and transphobia and misogyny, all of that stuff will cease to exist because there's no reason for it to exist. So you'll never catch me saying like, oh man, Mississippi, they voted for it, that's why their state sucks. It's like, no, I feel bad for those people, and you should too. It's not their fault that they're in an extremely gerrymandered state and they aren't offered proper access to education to even get to a point to where they can succeed, because everything's built against them as citizens of Mississippi because the state government is bad. So that's what he's saying here. When we say conservative, or even when I say liberals, I will often give a disclaimer of, I'm talking about liberal voters or I'm talking about politicians. But if I say it generally, I generally don't mean conservative voters, or good faith conservative voters, I should say. This is now on Mainstreaming, the alt-right playbook. Content warning for racist, sexist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic speech, imagery, and violence.
Say, for the sake of argument, there's this acclaimed science fiction writer and essayist who's writing his memoir in the late 80s. I'm just going to drop the pretense right now and say his name is Samuel R. Delany. He's been name dropped on this channel before and probably will be again because he's my favorite writer. So Delany's writing about his experience as a young gay man in the late 50s, early 60s, which is to say, nearly a decade before Stonewall, and he opts to share a couple of anecdotes which I will relate to you now. One is about the time when he decided to come out to his therapy group. While being gay in mid-century New York brought Delany a lot of joy, he found himself describing his life to the group as though being gay were something he was trying to fix. By reflex, he presented himself as lonely and ashamed, though in reality he was neither, and while he did eventually describe himself more accurately, he can't help but muse in the book on the limits of language at the time. Back then, the word gay was explicitly associated with high camp and effeminacy, where Delany's more of a bear, a term that was not yet in common usage. The default term was homosexual, which was then a medical classification for what was deemed a mental disorder. Queer and the F word were still slurs that had yet to be reappropriated. So, while all the words to describe himself were technically available, they all carried the connotations of the most popular narrative about gay men that they all appropriated. So
what's this root word? Paraphilic? I feel like I know what that word is. They're describing homosexual noun definition, a paraphilic sexual disturbance. Is that like in relating to like the phallus? Like penises? I find that interesting that homosexual is exclusively male here as well in this definition, if that's true. Persistent and recurrent sexual interests, urges, fantasies, or behaviors of marked intensity involving objects, activities, or even situations that are atypical in nature. Okay, so it's not exclusively male. It's just literally calling it a mental disorder. Okay.
Words to describe himself were technically available.
Paraphalic. Phallic was the word I was thinking of.
Connotations of the most popular narrative about gay men, that they were isolated, aberrant, and pitiable. Another story is about Delany being present for a police raid at a truck stop where queer men would meet for casual hookups. By the nature of being hidden in the bushes or secreted between parked semi-trailers, any man in attendance could see the men nearest to him, but none could get a view of the whole. But during the raid, from his vantage point, Delany saw for the first time the size of the entire crowd, and was shocked to see nearly 100 men empty out of the parking lot to evade the cops. In the morning, the police blotter mentioned only the handful of men who'd been arrested, and not the 80 or 90 who got away. Both of these stories are about how the dominant narrative of the isolated gay man becomes self-reinforcing. A constant threat of police violence meant gay men stayed hidden from the cops and, consequently, from each other. And the terminology of the era being mostly dictated by straight people made it very hard to talk about queerness without reinforcing that narrative.
He's talking specifically, obviously, about gay men here, but it's a very common popularization of this method as well, is something like statistics about like crimes in crime rate in cities, and like, oh man, Chicago is so dangerous. They have so many arrests all the time. And if you actually look into the data, one, it's typically not any more true per capita than a normal city. But anywho, also, they're policed way more. If you police any area, the crime rate will go up because there are more police to catch crimes. They don't ever go into detail of what crimes are being caught or why, or the socioeconomic reasons as to why crimes might be occurring in whatever city it is. They'll just say, oh, there's way more crime in big cities. And it's like, yeah, in my town, there's 13 police officers for 10,000 plus people, right? In a rural town, you'll have a police force of like 6 to 16 cops for anywhere from 8 to 12,000 people. So of course there's going to be less crime, primarily because there's way less cops to catch crime. That doesn't mean crime is not happening. It's just a way that they can take an argument and mainstream the idea that cities are dangerous. And I go to Chicago relatively frequently. I've never once had to deal with, I've never once had to deal with that. That's not saying that crime doesn't happen in Chicago. Of course it does. But I mean, that mainstreaming, the idea that Chicago is dangerous, also is it's pushed into a point to where we went to Chicago once, and Aurora's grandma called and said, "Oh my God, you're going to Chicago. Be careful." And it's like, "We're fine. What do you like? It's okay. You can go places. You can like, it's not that bad. I promise." Like, but that's how deep rooted this mainstreaming narrative is, which is Chicago is bad, which of course has racist undertones and stuff like that.
Delaney argues that among the most revolutionary things the 60s did to culture was the radicalization of language, redefining old terms and popularizing new ones, and giving marginalized groups a budding sense of their numbers. In short, two of the most powerful tools for making any marginalized group less marginalized are language and visibility. Folks, we're talking today about mainstreaming, the process by which a group or idea from the fringes of society moves towards the center, how strangers become neighbors, and how thoughts become common sense. There's this concept known as the Overton window, which I am not going to describe because plenty of people have done so already, link in the down there part.
Real quick, Overton window is typically in reference to modern times being shifted to the right. It's people on the right are being so crazy and doing such egregious things that we have a new normal. And so that's why you get sentences like, man, Adam Kinzinger is one of the good Republicans, because Adam Kinzinger was anti-Trump. And Adam Kinzinger is, of course, an Illinois politician, but he was a national politician. And he made a lot of news and headlines because he was anti-Trump. He voted to impeach him, I believe. And so a lot of articles about, wow, Adam Kinzinger, he's a good Republican. Never mind that Adam Kinzinger wants to strip healthcare rights from people and doesn't believe in abortion. And, like, he's a Republican. But the Overton window has shifted to a point to where people who, like Adam Kinzinger, will go out and actively say, I don't believe people should have access to medical care. That's good because people like Trump in politics were so bad. Or Mitch McConnell, if you want to go more mainstream or more realistic.
But in short, as a fringe group becomes more visible,
everybody
and
hydrate.
Language becomes more commonplace, their presence in society
Thank you, Guz.
starts to seem normal. They become demystified. Some people who thought they were strange and threatening will start to warm up to them, though this doesn't happen across the board. Many who hated them when they were fringe will see their becoming mainstream as a kind of existential occupation of territory, as in, if this is normal now, what does that make me? But much of what is considered standard in society today has gone through this process. Now, straight folks like myself often think that greater queer visibility and the proliferation of queer language is for our benefit. If our queer friends feel safe coming out to us and we know which words we should and shouldn't use, it makes it easier for straights and queer folks to be pals. And it is true that no one gets mainstreamed without advocates in the existing mainstream, but let's not beat around the bush. Language and visibility are tools of consolidating power. Visibility means having a sense of your numbers. Common language means forming alliances. You get a bunch of formerly isolated gay men connecting with each other.
Yes, Dapstar. Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. People saying, well, we can't kick Trump out because Mike Pence would be even worse. And it's like you hear that a lot of like, especially around the election in 2020 or 2016 even, of like, we can't let Mike Pence be in power. But ultimately, everything that Mike Pence stands for was being implemented at a national level. And there were people even calling for liberals, people who were ostensibly on the left, calling for the opposite of, we need to get Trump out. Let's get Mike Pence in. He's a nice guy. He's not Trump. And you see this a lot with liberals and their obsession over Trump specifically as a figurehead. One of the reasons why Trump's presidency was so successful as a Republican candidacy or presidency is because of the work that Mitch McConnell did in the Senate. And that work that he did by allowing so many judges, conservative judges, to be elected at federal levels and state levels, all across the board, is so damaging and so dangerous. It even started in 2011 or 12 when Obama was supposed to have a Supreme Court justice pick, or 2013. Yeah, it would have been later in his presidency. So whenever that was happening, Merrick Garland, I believe, Mitch McConnell was the person who was a Senate minority leader. Maybe he was majority at the time. He is Senate majority leader. He was the one who was able to hold up that spot from the Democrats and give it to Trump to then just have Trump pick from a list of pre-approved conservative judges that the Republican Party gave him. So it's oftentimes people like quieter. How many times have you heard, man, if Trump just didn't tweet during his presidency, he'd be a lot better of a president. I've heard that a lot. And it's like, yeah, it's because you don't want to listen to it, but it's bad things are still happening.
And accurately describing their experiences, you've got yourself a movement with or without straight friends. This is why it's to the benefit of straight society to tell queer men that they are isolated, because isolated queer men are in no position to make demands. And just so it doesn't get left out of yet another conversation, Delaney is writing about gay men because the book is a memoir and that's his experience, but neither he nor I are ignoring that the gay rights movement was kicked off by trans women. Okay. While the example I'm using is a positive one that any progressive worth their salt should be in favor of, mainstreaming is a morally neutral phenomenon.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks for stopping by.
Culture is plastic. Any fringe group or idea can become normalized, regardless of its inherent worth. And for a certain subset of extremely online people with fringe beliefs who understand the ways mainstreaming has evolved in the attention economy, it can be a weapon. We need to talk about how a group of predominantly disgruntled 20 and 30-something white men congregating on anonymous image boards becomes a political movement whose members get profiled in the New York Times, whose writing patterns are recognized by most of the internet, and whose figureheads get staffed in the White House.
So this is why, in my opinion, partially why debates suck. And you shouldn't ever put value into debates, because I think... one, we already discussed in the last video, or watching the last video, how debates are more often than not performative. They don't actually work to do what liberals think they do, which is like convert thinkers. Obviously it can, but a much more strict form of education, or a much more structured form of education, is going to be a lot more powerful than anything a debate ever will do in terms of converting people into different thought. That being said, also, when you debate a conservative, you are now giving a platform to that conservative person to get their voices out to an audience. And while I just said that debate isn't very effective, anybody who's getting pushed to the alt-right is a major loss, because hate really does breed and seethe within people. Often because hate is the consequence of finding a simple solution to a question. It's so easy to just be racist or anti-Semitic or misogynistic and say, like, we'll use incels as an example. It's so much easier if you are someone who is struggling as a man to date, find love, find somebody to be your girlfriend. And instead of being able to work on yourself and look inward and be like, oh, well, maybe I need to improve this part of me. Maybe I should brush my teeth more. Maybe I should get a nicer haircut. Maybe I should do these things to work on myself. That's all hard, and it sucks to have that conversation. What's a lot easier is to say women are entitled and they're supposed to just be breeding ports for men, and it's fucked up that they aren't giving me any attention, and I will do harm to them if they don't give me attention. That's a lot more easy of an answer to get to. And so that's why I think platforming and debating people, more often than not, it's just not doing anything good, and it can cause bad. So Richard Spencer, I believe that's Richard Spencer, if I know my names properly. I thought it was Richard Spencer. How far off was I? He was part of the this guy was part of the Trump staff, and he was part of the border stuff. That's not Richard Spencer. What department is the border? But this guy's just straight up a white supremacist. He was using while COVID was happening, they implemented a really strict incoming of immigrants to be like, well, we can't have people come in here and seek refuge because they're going to be sick with COVID, all while they're entirely denying COVID and its dangers. They were just using it as a racist way. He's like the main figurehead of that. He's a actual out and about white supremacist, and he was in the cabinet.
Where did the alt-right come from? Mainstreaming is not a wholly organic process, because usually the people who get mainstreamed are actively working to become so. But people usually have only so much control over how and how fast this happens. A group expands its language and visibility. If this leads to larger numbers and greater mainstream acceptance, the process repeats, this time with a bigger group and a larger audience. So long as there is growth, each cycle is more impactful. As the bigger a group is, the faster it gets even bigger, and the more common language becomes, the faster it proliferates. By all rights, if your beliefs are wildly unpopular, this process shouldn't work. Your language and visibility don't expand because too many people don't want to talk like you or about you. So, what then? Well, normally you either give up or bide your time, but if...
Now, Stephen Miller is his name, if you're interested in looking up stuff about him, not Richard Spencer. He was a senior policy advisor. He was a top aide to Jeff Sessions, who I'm pretty sure, if I'm not incorrect, although I could be wrong, pretty sure he got ousted for sexual assault. But I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure, though.
If you have a lot of media literacy and no real moral compass, you get it done dirty. If the media doesn't want to cover you, make yourself newsworthy. Threaten to publicly out immigrants in front of a crowd, start a hoax about white student unions, lead a white power rally and leave the hoods at home. Do the kinds of things that journalists cannot in good conscience ignore. And once you've made yourself news, they'll feel they can't publish a condemnation without getting your side of the story. So, bam, you've got yourself an interview. The more erratic and dangerous you seem, the more they'll want to write a profile so people can figure you out. The article about how surprisingly normal you seem in person basically writes itself. If you want to spread a conspiracy theory, send it to a small local news site that doesn't have the resources to fact check you. Once they publish something salacious, all the bigger news channels will have to talk about it if only to debunk it. Put provocative stuff in front of politicians because anything they retweet has to be news. In a pinch, you can always piggyback off a famous activist by making takedown videos, or, if you're really ambitious, harass someone at a conference.
He was just talking about this, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen this video. His creator's name is Gideon. I remember, I think this video is actually a pretty good video. Obviously, he wasn't doing it to be progressive or woke. He was just doing it as a bit, where he went to the most, quote unquote, the most racist town in America. And this is a town called Ozark in the county of Harrison, I believe, or maybe it's the other way around. Tennessee. I'm sure they'll say it. But this went huge. And if you've heard the viral TikTok audio, which encapsulated millions, I'll pull it up here. Of I'm a man, I'm a he, I'm a him. That's actually from this video.
What's your pronouns?
I believe.
I'm a male. I'm a man. I'm a he. I don't get into that mentally ill stuff.
Okay. Would you?
Okay. So this guy is an out and about white supremacist. It's actually, that was somebody else, but he talks to the same guy in this video. That man is an out and about white supremacist. He says that he's racist and he's a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And Gideon is, of course, making jokes. I think, actually, I don't think I've seen Gideon's video. I think I saw the other video where the guy went to the most racist town. And what you can do now as a Nazi, as a white supremacist, somebody who is just a bigoted piece of shit, is make a funny, clippable moment. Or if you come off as being just an old white guy, you're making the cause of white supremacy look better. Because it would be great if this dude was just seething and freaking out, and, you know, making Nazis look bad. But whenever a white guy is just able to be like, no, I just think black people are inherently worthless. I mean, that's just how I believe. That's just my opinion. You know, it's how I was raised. And, you know, my mom was a nice woman and my dad was a nice guy. And that's just what I believe. And then people will hear that and be like, huh, maybe Ku Klux Klan members aren't all that bad. And that's how you get it normalized. And it can be super dangerous. I wonder what, I mean, so many people. Oh, it's this guy here. Pootie was the clip here. So it's I remember this video being like okay. He harasses people in Walmart before he goes in there. But I think he has a semi poignant point here, but it's whatever. Probably more destructive than constructive going into the most racist town in America and putting a microphone in front of Ku Klux Klan members. Where were we at? Here?
Kinds of things that journalists cannot in good conscience ignore. And once you've made yourself news, they'll feel they can't publish a condemnation without getting your side of the story. So, bam, you've got yourself an interview. The more erratic and dangerous you seem, the more they'll want to write a profile so people can figure you out. The article about how surprisingly normal you seem in person basically writes itself. If you want to spread a conspiracy theory, send it to a small local news site that doesn't have the resources to fact check you. Once they publish something salacious, all the bigger news channels will have to talk about it if only to debunk it. Put provocative stuff in front of politicians because anything they retweet has to be news. In a pinch, you can always piggyback off a famous activist by making takedown videos, or, if you're really ambitious, harass someone at a conference. Everyone is desperate for clicks. If you can generate them, you'll get your message out. And if nobody's adopting your language, adopt it for them. Make sure you and all your friends each have half a dozen fake Twitter accounts spamming the same terminology at anyone who discusses race, gender, orientation, or ability. Put every Jewish name in parentheses until everyone on the internet knows what that means whether they want to or not. Hell, don't even do it yourself. Russia's not the only one who can make bots. Make thousands of bots. And make sure your real account, your fake accounts, and your bots all talk the same so that no one can tell the difference anymore. Make hashtags and get them trending all by yourself. And while you're at it, spam all the hashtags for movements you hate with porn and gore so they can't be used. And if your words and memes still aren't popular, just steal words and memes that are already popular. Just decide this means white power now. This is anti-feminist now. Saturate the web with your new usage, always insisting that you're doing it ironically, while eroding confidence in anyone who uses these terms in the original sense. And never stop insisting that
that's how you got stuff like how many news articles reported on Pepe the Frog being racist or white supremacist thing, right? As like, this is just a thing that Twitch users used. And then, I mean, Jesus Christ, what the fuck, ADL? Jesus Christ, why does ADL just have slurs all over it? Here's a LA Times. I assume they won't just show straight up slurs. Anyway, you get the point. It was just a Twitch thing that got popular. The original creator is not a racist or anti-Semite person. But that didn't stop 4chan from creating a campaign to make it that way. But I own sweaters with Pepe the Frog on it. Like, it's not inherently a racist thing, but the news loves to report on stuff like that. Same thing with the white power symbol that people do, right? I think everybody as a kid, at least where I'm from, played this game where you would do that down beneath your waist, and if somebody saw it, you got hit, right? And that's what a lot of people know it as, is that game. And then when the news starts reporting on it being white power, which was something that was actually started by 4chan, then actual white supremacists can start using it and then also have plausible deniability to be like, no, I'm not a white supremacist. No, you're being crazy, or it was just a joke. I was doing it ironically. I mean, there are high school students that like I think it was in Wisconsin that like Wisconsin high school students got arrested, or not arrested. They got charged for doing like the Nazi salute in yearbook photos. Was like 2 years ago. And I'm sure those kids aren't actual Nazis because they're fucking kids. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They think they're doing it ironically. They don't even know what's going on. Really, you know, they're kids, or they could all be Nazis. Who fucking knows? But that it's the same thing with the like the white. It's like, now you don't know. Now you don't know. You don't know. There are some people in there that like being raised to be Nazis. And there are probably just some kids in there that are just doing it because everybody else is doing it. But unfortunately, you don't know now because of how it's been done. And you can just do the plausible denials. I was joking.
Everyone would talk the same as you if there weren't so much damn censorship. Delaney's experience was having few words to describe himself that could conjure images of a gay man in a loving community. What the alt-right does is shout, "You just call everyone you don't like Nazi," while their people are giving interviews wearing Nazi paraphernalia.
I was going to say, Sal, I was about to roast you for saying bubblers. But absolutely, I saw that stuff. I think I've told the story on the podcast before, or maybe it was on stream. And obviously, it's not the same weight as all is obviously being targeted by rich people, calling people colored or writing down colored or whites only on stuff. But I'm from a small rural town, and we went to go play a suburb town in football in high school. And we got there, and this town is a city. It was one of like the 4 high schools in a city called Grayslake, the village of Grayslake, I suppose, which is a suburb of Chicago. It was a much bigger city, and because it's a suburb, it's also very wealthy. And we went there to play, and they have this huge stand. They have this huge stadium or field and everything. And like we normally have like, I don't know, a couple hundred people show up to our home games. These people had thousands. And they held signs that were calling us cornfuckers and hicks and like go back to your cornfield, shit like that. And that's just like acceptable. I mean, obviously that's classism at that point. But there were high schoolers in that student section holding up signs like that. And do they maybe believe that now? No, but there were parents that were holding up signs like that, and they definitely believe it now because unfortunately they weren't able to be saved. They just were raised that way.
Even argue that calling dudes marching to the tune of "Jews will not replace us" Nazis is somehow anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, they ask to be called identitarians and race realists. They want to stigmatize words that conjure images of white fascism, which, again, they very explicitly support, and replace them with words that conjure images of clean-cut philosophy majors. And where Delaney saw a group of 80 or 90 gay men reported in the papers as a group of 4 or 5, the alt-right wants to get reported as being much larger than it actually is. They want to draw attention to themselves by any means necessary, up to and including violence, but to ensure that anytime the cameras train on a violent act, there is a man in a suit ready to distance himself from it. To paint the picture that, but for a few bad actors, this is a peaceful movement of young, presentable intellectuals. This isn't simply a battle between different ideologies, this is a battle over the definition of normal. The alt-right knows how plastic culture can be. Their anger comes from the normalization of things they hate, and their movement exists because they believe anything that becomes mainstream can be made fringe again, which is why if you want to cater to them, you promise to reassert old norms. Much as we'd like to believe that people are driven by morality, most people are driven by the desire to be normal. And when the news is filled with images of swastikas, iron crosses, and tiki torches, the guy in the suit with the fashy haircut looks pretty normal by comparison. And that's why he wears the suit. Thankfully, the plasticity of culture cuts both ways. Just as surely as we can lose all the ground we've gained over the last half-century, everything the alt-right does to make itself palatable can be undone. In fact, it's maybe beginning to happen. It's going to be a long road that will probably require changes to how media platforms generate traffic and a lot of new politicians, but I want you to keep a phrase close to your heart. This is not normal. That phrase has become something of a mantra since the election in 2016, and it can be misused. White supremacy, sexism, and every other kind of bigotry are part of the fabric of American life and always have been. So even if this is more extreme than the usual, it's not by nearly as much as most privileged people like to think. So I want you to treat this less like an observation and more like a statement of intent. Whatever shit the alt-right pulls, I want you to say, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. We will not let this be normal.
A good example of that is what happened with, again, it's more local to me probably than a lot of people, but what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. the way the right was able to take what happened in the Kyle Rittenhouse case and make it seem like what he did was a totally normal and justifiable and understandable thing. And spin it to where he was just a teenager who was doing a noble thing, but also didn't know what he was doing. And also he did know what he was doing. And it's important to be able to say, like, no, that wasn't normal. What he did was inexcusable. And it wasn't normal. And nobody should ever feel like it's normal to want to cross state lines to illegally procure a firearm and murder 3 people. 2 people injured, 3, kill 2. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's something that conservatives are really good. This will be the last one we watch. It's about the ship of Theseus, which is a very cool Greek poem, Greek story, Greek fable.
Say for the sake of argument, there's this guy, Theseus. We'll get to him in a minute. People who know this story, please don't spoil the ending. Imagine you're bouncing around Twitter, a damn fool thing to do, but who am I to judge? And you come across someone claiming public figure X doxed me. You're thinking, oh no, I'm a fan of public figure X. I find their work very inspiring. So you look a little deeper into the story and you come to understand a few things. First, it turns out by public figure X, they mean an employee of public figure X. Well, employees are often acting on behalf of their employers. If your campaign staff meets with Russians, it's reasonable to say that you are in contact with Russia. So maybe this is something like that. Also, it turns out that by employee, they mean a contractor that public figure X hired several years ago. Well, okay, if a contractor does something on behalf of a client, that's basically the same as an employee doing it. And apparently by doxed, they don't mean public figure X or public figure X's contractor personally hacked anyone's computer. They mean public figure X's people shared information that had been acquired by someone else. Well, that's fair. If someone posts your home address on a forum and then the forum spreads it all over the internet, it's reasonable to say the forum doxed you. Oh, but it wasn't a home address or a private email, it was the person's name. Well, if you're anonymous for safety reasons, having your name revealed can lead to threats or silencing, so depending on why you're anonymous, having your name leaked can be a kind of doxing. Oh, and by leaked my name, they mean liked a tweet that had the name in it.
So I don't know what specifically he's talking about here. I was trying to look in the comments of what specifically he's referencing here, because typically what he does on these videos is he'll relate it to a real life thing. But I do know that a very similar thing to this happened with Libs of TikTok. If you're not aware, Kaya Reichik, is that her name? Kaya Reichik? In like 2 years ago, maybe, was quote unquote, Chaya Reichik was quote unquote doxed by a New York Times article writer. And Chaya, if you don't know, Libs of TikTok is a piece of shit. She's transphobic person who like claims that all she does is reposting what libs are posting on social media, but she will like post a school teacher who just has green hair and is like, today I talked about how I'm in a relationship with another woman, and what Chaya Reichek will take that video and then just like list what school district they work in and where to send emails to the supervisor and get this person fired. But before she was known as Chaya Reichik, her real name, she was just Libs of TikTok, and she was a faceless entity. And then a Taylor Lorenz, who's a Washington Post, sorry, not New York Times, a Washington Post reporter, quote unquote, doxed Chaya by just going to her house and asking for an interview. I'm trying to find a good article of it, but everything has so many ads. And then Chaya Reichek took a picture of Taylor Lorenz outside of her house and posted that picture, thus doxing herself. And then not long after that, Chaya started being more public, going on Tucker Carlson, yada, yada, yada. So it's a very classic statement of the Washington Post just doxed me. When you break down the statement, it turns into, well, you posted a picture of one of Washington Post reporters coming to your house to ask you questions or to interview you. Like, that's not the same thing.
Okay, now say you're bumming around Facebook, which maybe you shouldn't, but I do it too, and someone posts an article saying, all pornography is coercive. You're thinking, wow, that's a pretty sweeping statement. I gotta investigate this. So you read the article, and it seems there's a school of thought that since in porn the product is usually images of women's bodies, women tend to be socially pressured or financially incentivized to do things with their bodies that people like to see but they aren't necessarily comfortable with. Since that consent is not freely given, all pornography is coercive. And you think, well, what about worker-owned porn collectives, or amateur porn that's just exhibitionists who don't monetize their videos? And after digging around the author's work, you find buried in a footnote in another article that, in their opinion, if it's worker-owned or unmonetized, it isn't porn, it's erotica. Okay. Now say you've ambled into the wildlands of Tumblr, woe betide the ones who travel too far from their dashboards, and you come across the claim that activist Y is a bigot. You're thinking, geez, first public figure X and now this? So you read a number of other posts on the subject and eventually piece together that, by bigot, the people making this claim mean anti-sex worker, which, no question, that is a bigotry. And by anti-sex worker, they mean anti-sex, which, okay, that's kind of a stretch. And by anti-sex, they mean prudish, which is definitely a stretch. And by prudish, they mean is critical of the sexual objectification of women in fantasy imagery because they believe it drives women away from the community. Let's bring back our buddy Theseus. So Theseus, or more specifically his boat, is the subject of a famous thought experiment, the Ship of Theseus. It goes like this. If you were in possession of the Ship of Theseus, and one day you were to replace a single board with a fresh one, and the next day you replaced another, and the next day another, and the next day another, one by one until not a single stick of the original remained, would it still be the same boat? If so, what is the essence of boatness that remains even when all the materials have changed? If not, when did it become a different boat? When the last board was replaced? When half were replaced? 3/4? Now don't worry, it's a thought experiment. There's no right answer, just a lot of philosophy. But the corollary I'm making here is, what happens when you ship of Theseus a statement? These are arguments where words and bits of rhetoric have been replaced piece by piece until very little of the original sentence remains. How many words can you change in an argument until it's not the same argument anymore? There are a few different aims when somebody does this. One is making the unacceptable acceptable.
I do this a lot when I talk. In fact, there's a clip that I posted on my TikTok of the Cartnarks video from Hashan, where the Cartnark himself was making a quote unquote joke against somebody who was a handicapped woman who was parked in a handicapped spot. And she said, "You haven't been inside my body. You haven't seen my back." And then the Cartnark quipped back with, "I doubt anybody is going inside of your body anytime soon." And then I clipped that and I say, "You are unfuckable to me." That I was saying that Cartnarks was implying, "You are unfuckable to me, therefore I don't value you as a person." And I got comments of people saying like, "Wow, way to put words in his mouth." And I kind of did ship of Theseus his statement. He didn't say that out loud, but it was the implication. It's what he was implying, which was, people don't want to have sex with you. Nobody wants to be inside of you, is what he said. Nobody will be inside of you anytime soon. And therefore I value you less as a person. That came from him literally harassing her in a Walmart parking lot. And I assume he's going to get into this, but you can do that as a way to try to highlight people's, potentially underlying intentions with a hateful statement. Somebody can say something, like I said before, that isn't them saying the N-word, but it can still be an inherently racist statement or an underlying racism, like racist statement could be made without them knowing it. But because they didn't specifically say a racist word or a racist sentiment, people will fight back and be like, "Well, that's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth, and you're actually the fucked up one for saying that you think women's value is tied to whether or not they're fuckable," which now I didn't say that. So it's an interesting piece of rhetoric.
The statement, activist Y is against sexual objectification, is not controversial among progressives. If you go after activist Y for that belief, you're going to make progressive enemies. But if you redefine this as anti-sex and anti-sex as bigot, now it's activist Y who has the enemies, and you've just smuggled an anti-feminist argument into feminist language. 2 is making the unremarkable remarkable. Some pornography is coercive is not the kind of take that sells magazine subscriptions. But if you've got a private definition of pornography that excludes sexually explicit material that isn't coercive, well, that's a provocative headline, especially since at first glance, nobody knows you're using a non-standard definition of the word. Now, it is true that at its worst, the porn industry is a misogynist hellscape of unregulated
I can't believe half these images are on the screen.
There are a lot of people ready to blame that on this bit, rather than this bit, and are hungry for articles that tell them being anti-porn is progressive rather than anti-woman and anti-worker. Any acknowledgement that ethical porn exists would make that perception fail, so, of course, it's transmuted out of the conversation. 3 is cutting people off from their communities. The statement, someone who used to work with public figure X liked a tweet that had my name in it, gets converted into public figure X doxed me for the purpose of turning public figure X's community against them, with the added benefit of gaining favor with anyone who already hates them. It's a standard abusive boyfriend tactic. If you want to mistreat someone, first you cut them off from their friends. In the case of someone who is embraced by the progressive community, you slander them using something that community cares about. A lot of
You actually see this. I think a really good example of what he's talking about here is like J.K. Rowling, the J.K. Rowling of it all, which J.K. Rowling now describes herself and people like her as TERFs. The phrase TERF was originally invented by the left as a way to criticize people who, well, I guess we need to go back 2 steps. Radical feminism was a term that was used to describe feminism that was coming up in the 1900s, right? Somewhere along the line, radical feminism became a bad term. The term feminism, people associate negativity with. It, of course, was not created with the intent of the word feminism or therefore radical feminism being bad, but there is a large chunk of the population who hears the word feminist and thinks bad things. TERF was then created as a way to do kind of the opposite again, where it's like, oh, you're a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So radical feminist bad, but trans exclusionary is bad, right? As a leftist, as a progressive. But now J.K. Rowling can say, yes, I am a TERF. I identify as a TERF. Dave Chappelle says, fuck it, I'm a TERF, right? Because now they've said, well, this actually describes exactly who I am. I'm pro-woman, which will get a lot of people on my side. A lot of women will be on my side if I say I'm a feminist. And I can fight back against all the conservatives who hate feminism, while also saying, boy, but those trans people, I don't like them. And so now you have this insular group of TERFs. And the same thing happened with the LGB movement, where they just said, let's just get rid of the TQ. There's already all the jokes about, like, you know, the alphabet people and like LGBTQIA XZY. They're adding so many letters, even though obviously they didn't. And we all understand what you mean when you say LGBT rights or LGBTQ rights, plus rights, of course, we all understand. But you can take the framing that's popular. A lot of people hear LGBT and think positive things associated to it. And then they say, well, we don't like trans people. Let's take that and just say LGB. And that way we can be like, no, we're progressive. No, we love lesbians and gays and bis. We just don't like it if you're not that and if you're trans specifically. So yeah, it's a very common way to change thought.
Progressives are acclimated to getting burned, to finding out the gay activist harasses his employees, that the race activist exploits the labor of women, and that puts a lot of people on edge, and frankly, it's warranted. But when folks feel like they're just waiting to be betrayed again, they can be a little too willing to believe horror stories about their allies. I wouldn't say this is chronic, but it does happen, more than a little, and people will take advantage of it. The rhetorical ship of Theseus is a devilish maneuver because it relies on the kinds of substitutions that are, in a vacuum, defensible. Yes, A person who spreads private information is just as much a doxer as the person who acquired it. Yes, a person who is anti-sex worker is typically operating in a sex-negative attitude. Many of these substitutions will work in context, but the Ship of Theseus is about making an inordinate number of substitutions and then burying the context. One can make the already dubious argument that this isn't technically a lie, but it's meant to form a picture in your mind of something that didn't happen. Public figure X personally releasing private information as an act of directed harassment. The necessary context that describes what actually happened is only provided when the statement is challenged, usually in the form of lawyerly hair-splitting. We can cite precedent that in the case of Twitter personality Q versus NeoGAF, the leaking of Twitter personality Q's name was considered doxing, so it stands to reason. This gets you mired in the truthfulness of individual claims, debating technicalities of a statement blatantly meant to deceive. You're never given a chance to articulate the original statement before its transformation. Its final form just sits there, pristine and shareable at the top of your enormous Twitter argument, and we've already discussed the power of statements that are short, quippy, and wrong. More than most things I've covered in this series, these are tactics I've seen across the entire political spectrum, most especially number 3. Liberal, conservative, progressive, reactionary. This is a thing bad people do, even on the left. Someone with good politics isn't necessarily a good person who won't use the rhetoric of social justice to rationalize shitty behavior. The rhetoric is specifically designed to combat this, but it's not airtight, and there's nothing so special about progressivism that makes us immune to abusers and opportunists. The main difference is that when the right does this, it does it to the left, and when the left does this, it does it to itself. The far right is perfectly happy converting an attack or a bad argument into whatever they think progressive language sounds like, and bigots on the left are perfectly happy sneaking transphobic arguments into feminism, but the left by and large will not touch conservative language. We don't try to isolate a member of the alt-right by telling his community he's a race traitor or secretly gay. We don't often smuggle environmental messages into militaristic language, though some people who are not me think we should.
That also he uses as an example here, Save the Rainforest actually being a
messages into
a thing for defend our resources, used as ways to invade countries by the U.S. government. But a good example of this, they always say conservatism is just projection. Think about movements like defund the police, Black Lives Matter. These are statements that should not be controversial. If you're a progressive and you hold that belief, like a statement like Black Lives Matter, just the statement is Black Lives Matter. That's it. And what conservatives do is they think that you're trying to signal something else, and they're like, "Do you mean that Black Lives Matter more?" Because isn't the more correct statement all lives matter? Which, of course, now on the left, you should be able to recognize something like all lives matter as a dog whistle. But that's what happens with this stuff is they're almost like projecting where it's like, well, you can't truly defund the police. Do you mean you have to take away all police and police shouldn't exist? And it's like, that's not what we said. Where are you getting that from? You're just making that up. We're not trying to do that weird signaling.
Language, though some people who are not me think we should. The closest we come is when we run centrist candidates who present themselves as the best of the right and the left, but the right doesn't buy it. Even when we call someone on the right racist, homophobe, anti-Semite, which the right will claim is a Ship of Theseus, it doesn't serve the same purpose. People can disagree with me on whether the left is disingenuous when it talks like this, but they can't argue this is hurting the right. I mean, when's the last time a Republican lost a job for being too homophobic? They're more likely to lose the job for being queer. And we can call Republicans racist until the castle rises above the clouds, but their constituency is made up of people who either cannot be convinced that one of their own is a racist, or can, but don't care. Or they prefer it that way. Discussing bigotry on the right is mostly so the left knows what it's up against. There's no real solution to the Ship of Theseus other than to memorize what the dummy words are. To know when a TERF says child abuse, they mean calling trans kids by the correct pronouns. When a SWERF says rape, they mean consensual sex work. I can't give you a comprehensive list because I don't know all the words that would be on it, and it would be outdated as soon as I gave it to you. But with practice, you can get a sense of when an argument sounds fishy and which people tend to give fishy arguments. Usually with a bit of Googling, you can find all the buried context has already been dug up by someone. People tend to be pretty quick about this. Learning to spot the ship of Theseus when you come across it is useful not just so you don't repeat hearsay you haven't verified, but because it tells you something about the person using it. The ship of Theseus is a kind of elaborate euphemism. What language they use reveals what they think we care about. What language they won't use reveals what they can and can't say. It's a temperature check for where we are as a society. What things do horrible people feel they can get away with, and what things do they have to disguise? But no disguise is perfect, and if you do the fact-checking, it will show you where they're weak. People will try to contort the truth, but the truth leaves an essence behind.
Whew, God, I love this series. I think he does such a good job of breaking stuff like that down. I genuinely love this series. We'll continue it probably. I don't know about next Friday because I might be out of state next Friday. But I really enjoy the ship of Theseus argument here. One, because I think the ship of Theseus paradox thought experiment is interesting. But also because I think something like this, where did he have it here? Like here, this is something that's very common when it comes to like people who are anti-trans. You will hear mainstream conservative Republicans, people who hold office, say stuff like, drag queens are abusing our children. And it's just like, where did you get that from? And it's like, oh, it's because they just existed in front of people. It's just like, it's a crazy ship of Theseus argument. Like you're seeing ghosts. You're making stuff up that isn't happening because you're trying to push a political agenda. You're trying to push a weird agenda where you don't feel safe around queer people. That's probably the most prescient use of it, but they'll also use it on the defense of when they get called a name, when they're being properly called out. Where was this slide at? It's like this person is being called a homophobe, a racist, an anti-Semite, and now they can just contend that you're doing a ship of Theseus argument and just saying like, oh, you only think that because I'm not a SJW like you. I'm anything that's more conservative than you is a Nazi, huh? And they'll argue like you're devaluing the word Nazi or you're devaluing the word racist by calling everything racist or everything a Nazi. It's just another way to work against the progressive cause there. Yeah, that'll wrap up where we go today. I don't know. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I think this series is so interesting. I love the alt-right playbook. I think Innuendo Studios does a great job of describing stuff. And like I said, I've used it to help talk to my mom about stuff like this, who is a generally receptive person, to help her understand what's going on and my thoughts on that subject. If you would like to be part of the Leftist Book Club, go ahead, and the first week of December, we will be talking about the 100 Years War in Palestine, ! LBC, the first week of December. And for everybody else, thank you for hanging out and have a good Friday. Oh, wait. Oh, hang on one second, actually. Mm-hmm. 7 a.m. waking up in the morning, gonna be fresh, gonna. Everybody have a good weekend.